Hello, everyone, and welcome to January 1st, 2020. It's the first weekly manga recap of the new decade. We made it to the other side, Chris. We're here now.
Is it really the new decade, Nick? Because in a way, doesn't the decade start in 2021 and then goes...
I know. There was no year zero, man. Whatever.
It's like, if you ever want to be the most pedantic fuck at a party that no one wants to talk to, that's how you should start. Be like, are we really in the new decade yet?
Anyway, I don't think that we should be wearing the glasses that have the years on them because they were initially designed with only the aughts in mind, and now just putting the numbers over the eye completely ruins the aesthetic, so you should stop wearing them.
I mean, they're not wrong, but... Don't need to be an asshole about it.
I still want to punch you in the throat.
Yeah. So, Nick, how did you kick in the new decade, 2020?
I had work.
Well, there you go. I got sick, so we both started off on the right foot.
I might also be coming down with a little bit of a cold, so hopefully not. But yeah. I'm sure I'll know. I'll have a better idea tomorrow as opposed to today.
I had to take like a 5-hour power nap before this to try to kill off as much of the sickness as I could. So if I seem a little disorganized, it's because I didn't use all the time I needed. But also, if you hear me sniffling a lot, I apologize in advance. I did everything I could to try to kill before the show, but
And we appreciate it.
Yeah. But hey, sometimes things slip through. And I don't really know where I was going with that. So, Nick, let's talk about manga.
All right.
We've got so much to talk about.
This was a busy week in manga, and because we didn't do an episode last week because it was Christmas on the day we normally record the show, and there wasn't really a good day for us to record a makeup. So we're going to talk about the manga that was released before Shonen Jump went on a break. And we're also going to talk about the annual retrospective stuff. It's going to be a pretty packed episode, so we're just going to dive right in and get to it. Recap portion weekly manga recap. It's My Hero Academia, chapter number 255, Hero Hopeful. So this wraps up the whole thing where it turns out Kurogiri was actually Aizawa and President Mike's old classmate, and they seem to be on the verge of getting through to Shirakumo, to the point where Kurogiri's weird shadowy face actually starts to kind of take a more solid form, which somewhat resembles Shirakumo. And he manages to start gasping something out. And at Aizawa's urging, he manages to say hospital. And that's it, before suddenly everything starts to go, his body starts to go wild again, and then he falls unconscious. So that's basically all they're able to get out of him. Aizawa was crying. Aw, he claims to just dried out. It's just raining, Chris. He's not actually sad. Yeah.
He's a big tough man. Well, isn't this what was it? It was some I know it went viral, I guess, for whatever the fucking Twitter manga community is, but the person who was like, nothing happened this week in My Hero Academia, just a bunch of grown dudes crying. It's like, I guess Aizawa agrees with you on that. He's like, no, I'm not crying. I'm a big tough man. I don't cry.
He's like Zoro after taking the Kuma thing. He's like, nothing happened.
Well, that was just being a bamf, Nick. That was just the guy being a bamf. This is Aizawa just being like, yeah, I watched the end of Croco. Sometimes I watch the beginning of Upfall by the end of Coco, and I don't cry at all. I'll be like, you're lying.
You're lying.
You're lying.
You're a piece of shit. They haven't really gotten any solid answers on anything. They're glad to have gotten at least something out of it, but they didn't manage to get any specific intel, of course. Gran Torino reflects on how All for One was mocking them before, saying, you don't understand, this is like making wine, trampling the grapes to extract their juice. Uh, so they're like, we still don't really get it. But another clue has been added to reveal eventually, I guess. Um, so uh, I bel I don't believe this is Sukauchi, but if you put a plain-looking guy in a suit in My Hero Academia, I'm going to assume it's Sukauchi. I don't think it's him though. He messages Hawks's agency, and they pass on the word to him about, and then they signal to him about a disturbance at Wakaguma Hospital requesting rescue. And Hawks replies back that he's busy, and that's because he is in the I forget what the fuck they're even called at this point.
Oh, the Paranormal Liberation Front.
Yeah, yeah. He's with them, so he's like, all right, yeah, I'm busy. So he just tosses the phone away after just saying that. And he passes up. It's like, okay, yeah, it's hero work. Yeah, I've got work to do here though. But he thinks to himself, the pieces are in place. All that remains is you don't get the rest of his thought. But they were able to covertly pass on word to him about what they had found out. Basically, is the point of this. Anyway, then we cut to the doctor who's got Shigaraki strapped to a bed and has stuff like pumping into him, and there's blood flying out, and he's laughing like a mad scientist. So, yay!
I'm not sure what he's. I think it's because he was previously being restrained or something like that. But it really does look like the dude's like crab walking and like hip thrusting or something like that. He's like, "This is the best fun I've ever had in my life."
It's also hard to tell exactly who is laughing, if it's him, if it's Shigaraki, or if it's the doctor, because you just see the ha sound effects and they're not really tracing to anyone. So.
Yeah. You just see those Joker like ha ha ha's, Nick. And somewhere out there, a 14-year-old just found their new idol. They're like, I should be like Shigaraki. I'll also laugh at the world that doesn't understand me.
And then I'll kick dance to a song that just makes me seem really white. So.
I didn't actually realize that was a real song, by the way. I was like, no, that's like a thing they made for sporting events, right?
No, it's a real song.
I was like, no,
from like the 70s.
Some dude just like eventually was like, like they couldn't figure out words for it. Put actual music to it, and then that's the song, guys. And I'll give it to you for free. Like, oh.
So, yeah.
So
that's it. I can see how someone would say like nothing happened in this, but it's one of those things where it's like I'm sure that this will lead to something where you're going to be glad that the chapter existed to help set it up later. Yeah.
And we mentioned before that I feel like a large part of the emotional core of this is kind of undercut by us not having that side story to establish this relationship between the three of them. So this might also be a much better chapter if you've engaged with that. Now, what we normally do.
Now, seeing Shirakumo's face coming out of Kuragiri's void thing is a really cool visual, I will say, though.
Oh, and All for One's face as well, when he's just talking about squishing grapes, is a great face and a great line. But the way
he just really likes wine. Yeah, I mean, it's nothing nefarious to that.
And who doesn't, really? With the way the world works today, who really just isn't into some wine? Guys, so the way our retrospective year-end episodes would normally work is we would do them separately, usually during one of the 2 weeks that Jump would be off.
Right.
And because it kind of didn't function that well for us this time, we're going to be doing it in combination with the regular episode. So the way we're going to be doing it, one of the big parts of it is to talk about where that series has been over the course of a year, and specifically trying to make Nick guess where the series was exactly at the start of 2019. So Nick, do you remember?
And I've done no preparation for this. This has to be just literally what I remember.
Yeah. So Nick, where do you think My Hero was at the start of 2019?
I believe that, and I've actually been thinking about some of these over the last couple of weeks or so, trying to I haven't been like going back and checking or anything, but I've just been trying to remember. And I believe that given where we were at certain points of the year and kind of working my way backwards, that it was right around the time that the hero rankings were revealed, with Endeavor being number 1 and Hawks number 2. And then they did the whole thing with the new model, Nomu.
So it was actually during the Class 1A versus 1B fights. Those were
Oh,
wrapping
okay.
up.
I thought that was that had happened later. So
No, this was actually we started and it was the very end of the Class 1A fights. It's literally the end of the chapters when Deku meets the whip guy that's inside of his
really,
brain or whatever. Yeah.
and that my villain arc lasted way longer than I thought it
Yeah,
did.
there's quite a few on this list that when I put them together, I was like, shit, that one went a lot longer than I thought it did. So, yeah, there's quite a few that are a little surprising. We're like, I guess not actually all that much happened during this year. So, if you were looking at My Hero, you'd be like, there was the end of that arc, then sort of the My Villain arc, and then what we've kind of had recently with the small like hero exam studies, and then
Yeah.
there was smaller stuff in between there. There was like the Christmas stuff and things like that in between there. But yeah, no,
No wonder it feels like the heroes haven't done anything in My Hero then, because literally they just weren't around for most of the year.
and not really doing like super heroics either. Like even at the end of that, you're like, they're kind of still fighting each other though.
Yeah. All right. Well, okay. So I was basically off by about one mini arc. Okay.
Yeah, you were pretty close. You were pretty close.
Well, all right. So with that done, we're gonna move on to Spy Family. Kind of. It's one of the side mission chapters. The point of this chapter is it's just a little. It's not connected to any of the stuff going on currently in Spy Family with the dog that they're getting for Anya or anything like that. This is actually about Frankie, Lloyd's contact and device hookup guy. He wants Lloyd's help, and so the chapter starts off with them like meeting in an alleyway. Frankie's trying to look all cool by put his hand in his pocket. He's got a cigarette in the other hand. He's like, I've fallen in love with someone. And Lloyd's just like, okay, bye. Just leaves him be.
Wait.
The whole point is that Frankie needs Lloyd's help because he's like, hey, you've got a wife and a kid. I need your advice. I need your help on doing this stuff. And and so they go to meet for coffee to talk over what they know. And Frankie's like, oh yeah, this girl named Monica McBride, and he recites all this information about her. And Lloyd's like, you've been stalking her. And Frankie's like, you do that with everyone too. Yeah, but I'm a spy. I'm supposed to do that. So, Lloyd tries to prepare Frankie with like this huge conversation flow chart to get him prepared for the next time that he sees the girl, and then even actually dresses up as her kind of to go over with him. But we kind of montage through all that. Then Frankie goes to see the girl, and we don't actually see how the conversation goes out. We see Lloyd with his family, and they happen to come across Frankie. And so Lloyd's like, oh, weren't you going to do the thing? He's like, oh, yes, my date with Monica. I extended a proper invitation, but apparently she'd forgotten to shut off a gas line in her home and needed to run back to take care of that. But she said we'd have a movie some other day. Yeah, it's great, right? And so Anya just kind of stares at him, then like pats his arm comfortingly. We don't actually see her reading his mind, so maybe he's just that obvious in how big a lie he's telling. So he was gonna go drown his sorrows at the bar. Poor guy. Lloyd shows up later. Lloyd shows up later to share a drink with him and kind of make company with him and kind of comfort him. And then the very last panel in the chapter is Anya playing at the park. Meanwhile, yours in the background skipping across giant columns or something.
Yeah, it's just stuff that people do, I guess. I can remember. So when I worked downtown, I used to walk across like past the state capitol. You have to understand, this is Pennsylvania. It's Harrisburg. Despite the fact we're like a major state, the Capitol sucks. Like the Capitol building's like fucking lame as shit. The craziest thing is that in October they dye the fountain water pink in honor of breast cancer awareness month, and I'm 100% serious when I say that's the most interesting thing Capitol does. But every so often you'd see tourists who would arrive there, and you're like, why did you come here of all places? And the one thing I would always see them doing is there's a path to drive into the Capitol building, but you can't have it accessible at all times. So it has like these giant steel columns that rise up and have to be lowered for anyone to go over it. And you'd see people just standing on top of the columns. And every time, and it's exactly what looks like yours doing, where you're like, you just see people kind of walking across them. And you're just like, is this what you came to Pennsylvania for? like you didn't do the research. You were like, yeah, all the cool shit's in Harrisburg, right? Like the bell and the Rocky statue and those big stairs. Like, no, you saw it. It's our columns that lead into the fucking Capitol building. And the water, it's August, so the water's normal colored. So that's it.
It's always weird whenever the capital of a state is
not like, the one that it should be.
Yeah, well, it's like barely in the top 5 cities that people think of when they think about your state. Like, what's the capital of Florida?
Isn't it Tallahassee?
It's Tallahassee. Okay. But like, if you go through, it's like what's
Miami, Tampa, Orlando,
Jacksonville.
Yeah.
So
yeah, you're like
people think 5. Do you know why Tallahassee is the capital of the Florida, Chris?
Oh, is it probably to get it away from the disgusting like bottom part of it?
No, it's because when it was chosen as the capital, it was located equidistantly between what were the 2 biggest cities in the state at that time, which are now things that, aren't even in the top 10 cities you would think of in Florida.
I was going to say, your state has 3 football teams. Not a single one of them is in the city that's the capital of your state.
Just a college.
Yeah. Nick, where do you think Spy Family was at the start of 2019?
I believe it didn't exist.
Yep, there you go. So there's a couple.
There's got to be a few that'll be really easy for me to get.
I'm not going to lie. We actually have a bunch of series this year that have started kind of within the whole kind of roundup, especially because we've been talking about a lot of them. So there's quite a few that should be relatively easy.
Anyway, this chapter was all right. I actually have to wonder because Monica, this girl that Frankie has a crush on, is very like she's her image is quite large whenever it appears on the page. So I wonder if she might actually pop up again at some point in the future. It's it doesn't strike me as like I just randomly drew some lines for this character for this one joke chapter. So possibly Frankie's woman woes might come up again in the future.
Maybe.
So. All right. Eden 0.
I thought we did Boruto before it. All right. Whatever.
I might have it in a wrong order. Did
I might be wrong. I forget where these two always go. So we'll just do Eden 0. So Eden 0, chapter 76, Rebecca versus Sylph. This is a big fight chapter.
It is.
It's a space battle, which is surprising when it's like, yeah, it's the wind user versus the person who has speed legs. How do they fight?
In space, where there's a vacuum.
A giant space dog fight. Like, okay. Which is actually a pretty cool fight. Like, there's a lot of chaos kind of happening, a lot of stuff. There's honestly not a ton to say about it beyond just recapping all the action as it happens. We find out Sylph kind of has some obsession with somebody else, or just a weird way of phrasing. She says specifically that wind, I will stop it for her. She also later refers to Rebecca's wind as being stopped, so I think it's just a weird way she says it, but I don't know if she says I will stop it for her is her saying I'm going to stop it for somebody else, or just a weird way of saying I'm going to kill Rebecca and like kind of switching tenses around to be confusing. We do get a brief little like look in on Sister's torture session with, I don't remember, Stretchy Girl, who we know she had kind of like goo-like consistencies. Well, she's a goo person. It's not a super shock. She just goos out of the ropes, and they're like, all right, well, I guess we'll let you go now. And
pretty much
she's like, yeah, all right, no one's ever defied Drac and Joe and lived, so there we go. And then the crew is hanging out over at Saval's place. I can't remember his exact name, but Saval, one of those things like that. They're hanging out there. Rebecca is trying to head towards that direction, but she gets trapped inside of a wind ball of some kind by Sylph. So
yeah. Along with Happy, she just kind of shrinks them down into a little wind ball, and you can hear them going, help!
Yeah.
Help!
So it's curious to see if every member of the Elemental Four has some kind of weird incapacitation ability, or
I was thinking the same thing. We've seen two of the three scenes so far transform their victims into their element in order to capture them. Uh, so yeah, it's odd, and it doesn't make them seem very different from each other.
Maybe
Uh,
maybe the way the fire sniper kills you is he hits you with the bullet and it turns you into fire, and then he lights you on a candle and you're stuck as a candle
oh
for the rest of your
no!
life.
Until the candle melts all the way.
And then everyone stops and they're like, "I don't understand. If you have a sniper rifle and you have to shoot,
Why don't you just shoot someone in the head and kill them?
They're like, no, no, no. It's the Elemental Four. Dragon Joe's very specific. We have to live up to the gimmick. All right, it's 2020. All right, fucking kayfabe's dead all over the place. You gotta stick to your gimmick, and that's why MJF is the best wrestler on Twitter.
He's really not. Uh, the other note that I made about this chapter, just reading through it, was apparently Hero really liked Darling in the Franxx, that anime that came out last year with the girls that were piloting mechs while taking a doggy style position in front of their co-pilots, because she's like bent over on this like motorcycle looking kind of seat, and there's a lot of shots of Rebecca from behind. And it's like, oh, hey, they're shooting stuff. And there's Rebecca's butt again. And it keeps on happening a lot.
Yeah,
I don't even know how you can even fit a camera back there. It doesn't seem like there's enough space in that cockpit to get the point of view in.
No, not really. I guess I should also mention that Rebecca does manage to use her ether gear inside of the ship.
It's the most consequential thing that happens.
I was like,
in the
I guess
whole
that's
show.
relevant to a certain point, but yeah. Now here's the important thing, Nick. Can you guess where Eden Zero was at the start of 2019? Now, Hero's probably the toughest in the world because his pace is by far the most erratic in comparison to everybody else. So do you run the risk of going too far back? And then be like, no, Hero did 7 arcs this year.
Well, because, okay, if I think of it in terms, maybe I should, instead of trying to work my way backwards, I should start from the beginning and try to work my way forward, because that means that it would be around chapter 27-ish. Okay, I think that if I think of the furniture guy, that's probably going back a little too far. Oh. I'm going to say that it is. I'm going to guess that it is the moment where the real sister is revealed.
That is exactly.
Yes!
It is the fight between the real sister and the fake sister, but it is on Gil, so it was that same arc. So you have to remember, there was that arc. That was the entire arc inside the hacking video game. There was the entire Homura arc on Sun's Jewel. And we've already introduced 3 of the 4 Elemental 4 after beating the initial 4 whatever horseman bullshit. So we have gone through. You just had to always remember Hero's pace is like 2 arcs faster than you think it humanly should be capable of being.
So 3 of the 4 empresses, or whatever they're called, the generals of the Eden Zero, have been introduced, or joined the crew rather, in this single year.
Yeah, everything basically was within. We also met Zhao Mei, our favorite character. I believe that was all contained within this year as well. So
that did happen, yes, with all of the little mini fights that she had them do. Actually, yeah, Zhao Mei became an actual character in this year. God. All right.
Next thing, oh, finally, I'm on the board.
Boruto, Naruto Next Generations, chapter number 41, The New Team 7. Last time, our heroes came up against Boro, who was guarding the weird Voss thing that Naruto was captured inside of, and Kawaki and Boro from the effects of the strange dark mist that emanated from Boro's body. This chapter begins with them trying to figure out what it could be. They basically, Kawaki breaks down for them why his karma didn't work, and he basically says what that means is that the mist is not chakra originated. It could be chakra manipulated, but he explains the difference of like, okay, if water is created by a jutsu, karma can absorb it, but it can't absorb water that is manipulated by chakra. So it's energy versus physical matter, essentially. So Mitsuki's like, well, I had my snake absorb some of the mist, so we can analyze it. Sarada, use your Sharingan and determine what it is. And Sarada's like, it can do that. And so she focuses her Sharingan as a little bit of the black mist comes out, and she says, it's viruses. So you guys have contracted an illness. So they're like, all right, well, there's no jutsu that produces that, so it's got to be from scientific ninja tools. So, okay. So Mitsuki says, all right, well, now that we know about that, we can do something about it. But before we actually go and try and fight this guy, this is the new Team 7, and we need a commander who can keep us unified as a squad. And he nominates Sarada basically right away, saying like, hey, you called the retreat earlier. We would have already been wiped out if not for that. So we should follow your lead, I think, and that means that you're our captain and we need to follow your decisions, immediately as opposed to hesitating. And immediately Boruto says, why does Sarada get to be the commander?
You're like,
it's not going to be you stupid little shit.
When like 2 pages earlier was him being like, darn it, they're using ninja tools again. Their favorite toys. It's just him like,
this doesn't count.
Game Boys are art.
So Sarada's a little bit taken aback by this, but Kawaki's like, yeah, let's do it. And Bork's like, fine. So she says, okay. And though she does kind of dork it up a little bit by saying, well, Captain Sarada does have a nice ring to it, though not quite as nice as Lord Hokage. We get it. You want to be Hokage. You want to be the Wizard King. So a bit of a time skip happens. Sarada goes and confronts Boro. And so he's like, oh, you're going to fight me alone, eh?
It stunned me at first because you see the panels and you see like the big panel with the shunk and you see her big high-heeled shoes like landed. I was like, I fucking forgot she fights in like 6-inch high-heeled boots.
Mitsuki's like, Sarada, if you hadn't worn those weird shoes, then we would have probably gotten away a lot faster. So clearly you shouldn't be our captain until you get better footwear sense.
It really, it's the moment you look at, you're like, I don't know if there is a more impractical outfit a human being could wear than like a tiny, like a super small pencil skirt with like 6-inch high heels. You're like, time to do gymnastics. Like, all right.
Well, if Dr. Stone has taught me anything, Chris, it means that the strongest member of the village wears a tiny dress and bizarre shoes that can't be good for combat.
No. That is true. Buichi-sensei, help us.
So, Sarada flat out tells Boro, we know that you use a scientific ninja tool to release a virus. And he's like, okay, so what are you going to do about it? He goes up after her, starts shooting lava blasts at her. We get a pretty straightforward fight scene for about a third of the chapter, if not more.
Yeah.
And they're just exchanging blasts from their assorted abilities. Boro ends up kind of going into hiding in the terrain and darts around her so that he unleashes more of the virus. So she's kind of surrounded by it. So she takes up into the air, trying to jump out of it, and he knows that this is her only escape route, so he immediately cuts her off and punches her back to the ground. She gets ensnared by the virus, and he's like, ah ha ha, you're going to lose control of your body very quickly because it's so fast-acting. It's too late for you. And he picks her up off the ground, holds her by the collar. She starts to weave jutsu hand signs, and he's like, ha, soon you'll be so paralyzed you won't even be able to move a finger, just like how your friends are. And Strada's like, well, since you brought me so close to you, that means I can't possibly miss. And she does the Uchiha fireball jutsu thing, starts punching him in the fucking face, And then she shouts out, "All right, come out, boys." And Boruto and Kawaki jump in. Boruto summons a Rasengan, and Kawaki touches his back so that their karmas link up and it gets even more powerful. And they blow the fuck out of Boro. His entire upper body is blown to bits.
So you assume that since there's still like 10 pages left in the chapter, he's probably okay, and it seems like kind of a weird thing. But there's a moment where his body explodes, and the hero's like, "Yes, we did it!" And I was like, Jesus.
We brutally murdered him.
You didn't just kill him, you fucking eviscerated 50% of him.
It really doesn't... It's not a good look for a 12-year-old to be like, "Yeah, I completely destroyed his head."
They won't have enough to bury anymore. High five.
All right, high fives for closed casket. And they're like, all right.
I wonder if they have half a suit to bury him in.
Like the one Liv Morgan wore.
Look, Boruto, he has a family.
So
think of how much money they'll save on embalming. 50% off. I think we might need to take you to a therapist or something. This doesn't seem like a normal response for a child to have.
What? He was using scientific ninja tools. He wasn't even human.
He might as well have been a monster. He was some kind of freak, man. Him and his toys. Like, look at this. Boruto's a pacemaker. Yeah! This monstrous technology. I'll rip it straight out of him. You know what? While I'm here, I'm just gonna Rasengan it out of existence.
He just starts, like, pissing on the rest of the body. I have to make sure whatever other ninja tools are embedded in him don't work. Boro regenerates. He's fine.
No!
And I like how Kawaki's like, I completely forgot about your regenerative abilities. You just said that he had regenerative abilities like a chapter ago.
He's like, I forgot that very notable thing that all members of that like group kind of have, and that really should be always considered when fighting them because you really don't know when you've actually beaten them. But you know what? Just slipped my mind, you know? It's kind of, there's a lot to look at out here. You mean the featureless expanse of ground and clouds? Yeah.
So much to distract you. Look, another rock. All right, guys, before we go into this battle, there's something very important I need to tell you. It could possibly mean the difference between life or death. You see, I remembered that the black mist that comes from Boro's body is, a rock.
Guys, does that cloud look like a giant sea of clouds to you?
Guys, I never realized. That rock's brown. What do you think about it? You know, rocks could be like all sorts of different colors, but so many of them are brown. And yep, those are brown, all right.
Yeah.
What was I talking about again?
Nice shoes, Sarada.
I'll bet they're great to wear in combat. So, weirdest part of the chapter for me, even putting all this insanity aside, is that when Boro's fully formed, he's like, the antibodies worked. I swear I just heard Boruto say that. With what? Your head was missing.
Oh, I have ear vents on my knees, so you know that was really on your. That was really a boo boo on your part.
I've got a second nose on the back of my elbow. Yeah. So Boro's like, all right, well, but the antibodies that neutralize the virus only exist in my bloodstream. So how'd they get a hold of the? Oh, right, Mitsuki's snake was biting my arm, so I guess it drained my blood when it was injecting venom into me. Since that's how things work. Anyway, so they harvested the antibodies from inside of Mitsuki's snake the same way that they used it to examine the virus. So now they have immunity against the virus. Hooray! Boruto's like, all right, your cowardly virus tech's not going to work anymore, old man. I'm going to fuck you up. And Sarada's like, hey, stick to your plan and don't let your guard down. Boruto's like, yeah, I know. And so they all surround him. But Boruto's just like, well, I'm just gonna disrupt your teamwork then. And he immediately bum rushes towards the thing that's imprisoning Naruto. Kawaki rushes after him and disrupts the formation. So what's gonna happen now that their teamwork apparently has been broken up so easily?
This is a really good chapter. This was a really good fight. It's cool seeing that there's like actual tactics and strategy being used in Naruto again. We kind of mentioned that last chapter as well, that there was actual strategy going into this fight. It wasn't all just like six, like, or I guess most recently just two super broken characters kind of fighting against each other, really. So I thought this was super satisfying. It's nice to see that big moment for Sarada, then being like, we need a captain. If this is going to be a new team, we need a captain. It's got to be you. You're the only one that got us out of here. And it's nice to see like we're still going with the idea of like Sarada's the actual like leader of this team, and it's a different sort of story with Naruto in that way. So I really enjoyed it. I thought this was a really good chapter, Boruto.
Naruto's whole team didn't really have a leader beyond Kakashi or Yamato later because the kids were never really left to their own devices and then nominated a leader because they were together for such a short actual time. So
yeah. So Nick, this is a hard one because there were only like 12 fucking chapters of Boruto this year. So do you remember where Boruto was at the start of 2019?
I am going to say that it was at some point in Naruto's fight with Delta.
It was right as that was kind of starting. The chapter was the two of them basically fighting, but none of them like revealing all of their cards quite yet. It was kind of like their test back and forth whole thing. So, not actually a ton happened in Boruto over the past year when you look at it like that.
Well, there's only so much when the chapters have consisted largely of extended fight scenes. So, yeah. And it's only,
there's only 12 of them,
a
basically.
chapter a month, yeah.
So it's not a ton of room for it, but it was interesting. It was like, I guess there was just the stuff with Naruto and Sasuke versus whatever his name was, and then this. So.
Yeah. And there were the little, quiet moments in between, too. So. All right. So, move on from there to Agravity, boys. Chapter 3, I'm gonna be 500 AU. So, this is a chapter.
That's a reference to fucking the Proclaimers, isn't it?
I guess.
Yeah.
I don't know what 500 AU means, but whatever.
Is it a poop joke? That's all I remember from this chapter.
It was a poop joke. This entire chapter was about poop. Now, it was also a chapter that largely focused on Geralt's character, the release smart member of the group with the glasses, and essentially how he relates to the rest of the group, how they ended up meeting him. But all of this is put into the context of he's got really bad poisoning, and because he is super eccentric, he can only go to the bathroom in his personal quarters on their ship. He refuses to shit in the woods. He refused to shit anywhere else. So he has to get back to their ship to shit. And they have to get him back there because otherwise he won't shit. And he's in a lot of pain because of the food poisoning. And the chapter ends with everyone basically making a heroic sacrifice, kind of, to fight these like wild animals and get him there. And eventually he's dropped off by Bara, and who like is left slumped over as if he has just, been through a war afterwards, even though he didn't seem to actually be doing anything. And Geralt comes back out of the ship afterwards, and there's a big 2-page spread of him smiling while saying, "I took a dump." And the rest of them are smiling happily for him. This is a very strange series, Chris.
It is. It really, like, so the first chapter, there really wasn't that, like, so the past 2 chapters have been, like, set up something as a gag, and then try to have a really earnest moment with it by the end of it. That still kind of winks at the fact that this is a joke. I mean, you can't take a look at a guy walking and saying, I just took a dump, without being like a little chuckle to it. No matter if it's drawn with like the care and elegance that honestly, I don't know if I've ever seen before in another series. Like, just like so much care. It would be as though the chapter, like, We Never Learned has a love profession in it. And I don't know if it's drawn with as much elegance as fucking I just took a dump. So it's strange. Like, I can't tell if this is the tone of the series always or what. It's weird and odd. That's the best I could really say.
Okay, so according to the chat, 500 atomic astronomical units is basically like is what it says. So I'm gonna be 500 miles. I'm gonna be 500 astronomical units. So there you go. It was a Proclaimers reference.
Were we that lazy that when it came time to name astronomical units, we were just like, oh, let's call that. We didn't give it an actual name.
So this was weird.
It is very weird.
So it's been 3 chapters with this series, Chris.
Yes.
Are we going to keep reading it?
My heart says no.
Then we're not going to read it.
All right. That's it. You didn't think I was going to waste it on that.
I thought we might.
Nah, Nick, you savor it. You hold it in there. I'm waiting for...
You hold it in, Nick, like the dump that Geralt needed to...
Nick, right there, that's Sonic the Hedgehog post refixing his fucking visuals. I'm waiting for we get some fucking human teethed monster of a Sonic the Hedgehog, and I'm gonna be like, no, we're reading this. This fucking garbage.
All right. Oh, by the way, Agravity Boys didn't exist at the start of the year earlier. Who would have thought? Yeah. Mission Yozakura family. Chapter mission 18, rather, reception. Tayo wakes up. Mutsumi's in a wedding dress. Turns out they're having a proper actual wedding reception today, and Tayo didn't know about it. They've, of course, been married for the entirety of the series, but they didn't ever actually have a ceremony, which they have a bunch of people from the criminal underworld as a part of. So it's explained to Tayo pretty quickly as this old man presents him with a bouquet of flowers that a knife nearly comes out of and stabs him in the eye. And essentially, he's told a reception is a place for celebrating, but also to judge if one is worthy of being celebrated. So you're going to be tested to see if you're worthy of being the new leader. And Kyoichiro tells him all of this in a very ominous voice while he's wearing a wacky fish costume.
Yep, as you do.
So Kyoichiro immediately is like, I'm going to protect Mutsumi at this reception, but you're the target, so good luck with everything. And a bunch of, people start approaching him with guns and stuff. And then all of a sudden, there's a video.
I was going to say, and to this point, I was about ready to be like, I'm done reading this series. I was like, it's every fucking chapter is just, here's a normal situation, but it turns out a bunch of people are going to try to kill Tayo during it. How can he survive? I was like, if they do the same fucking premise for the 19th fucking time in this goddamn series existence, only 18 chapters, but they found a way.
A video pops up on a screen, and it's the Yozakura family's mother, Mutsumi and Kyoichiro and everyone else's mother. And she says, Kyoichiro, enough of that. And everyone's shocked by this. And it turns out it's a tape from the past, from when all of them were kids. Little baby Mutsumi is there, and Kyoichiro is holding her and stuff. And so Mama Yozakura says, this is a letter for Mutsumi's wedding reception. Knowing you, I'm sure you'll be up to something, so I'm scolding you in advance. So that's pretty nice. We see, how they've been kind of fighting and stuff like that. There are little tidbits here and there of like, oh, this character has barely changed at all. This character has changed a lot, that kind of thing. And Futaba says that, yeah, I'm putting this up because, Mom entrusted this to me. And so the message essentially states that, things are going to get way worse for you guys over there than they are here. And if you're not careful, Kyoichiro might even be trying to kill your husband and all this stuff. Mutsumi is very emotional to get to see her mother delivering this message. And she says, I thought that I might not have much time left to actually tell you this when you're older because, your father died recently. And so I'm sorry to bring you into this messed up family, but I was happy to have spent time with all of you. And I hope you have a family of your own that makes you think that too. That's my wish for you. So, and then she delivers a message to Taiyo saying, thank you for being with Mutsumi. It's going to be really difficult accepting her fate, but I hope that you'll take good care of her. And he holds her hand and he says, I will. So, oh, it's nice. Afterwards, Mutsumi gets up on stage and speaks to a microphone saying that as the new head of the Yozakura family, she's going to maintain the best. She's going to try to maintain the spy family that her mother had left behind, and she looks forward to working with everyone. And she says, I'd like you all to please see us off in our new chapter of life under a thunderous hail of bullets, which, of course, I was like, oh. So no, they aren't throwing rice. They're gonna be trying to kill them, and so he's kind of got to lead her through this while holding her hand. And interestingly enough, there's some narration at the end of the chapter as he's fighting his way through all these assassins and stuff, saying, "It's been a while since I first came to this house. I've realized that there's so much I still don't know. This is a new start for Mutsumi and me and the Yozakura family." This almost seems like the chapter that it's like, okay, if the series ends suddenly, we'll end on this. This is a nice note to end on. And it's like, hey, and they had many more adventures and stuff like that. Because it's not the final chapter, it almost kind of makes me think like you've been saying for a while that, yeah, we're gonna do some different stuff now.
We gotta fight bad guys or something, like monsters. I don't know.
Gotta have a plot. So I'll be interested to see if it does turn out that way. It was an all right chapter, and there were some nice moments in it. But I will say, I will fully admit that when Kyoichiro was tying up Taiyo like, this is a test to see if you're worthy, it's like, come on, man, you've done this so many times in the past 5 chapters.
I came so close, just like closing my phone out of anger and just walking away for a little bit. I was just like, I can't do another one of these fucking chapters.
And I'm much higher on the series than you are, and even I was just like, oh, come on! Oh, thank God, something different happens.
Yeah, I almost kind of enjoy that the series was like, no, stop that. We've done this too much. Enough of that. You're very predictable and annoying, me, Big Brother character. Stop this. So I enjoy that entire little thing of the mom showing up, and I do actually enjoy the framing of the way. And I don't know why, like. I know it always exists, but I always forget they're actually legitimately married in that. So it's kind of nice seeing like parts of that where you're like, oh, okay. And it was also nice seeing the baby bucket guy. Now, he's a baby with a bucket in his head in one panel. And I'm going to be fucking infuriated if we finish this goddamn series and we never get a goddamn chapter
about him.
No,
where is this?
I don't know.
If this was supposed to be the last chapter, why would he had a chapter focused on him yet?
The only way it could be better is if in the flashback like video too, you saw he had like alien, like 6 arms or something like that, like an alien. Just like, why didn't we get to this guy? I mean, no time.
Are you sure that that's from the same?
Yeah, I mean, maybe it's a different Buckethead.
Buckethead. There was no Yozakura family at the start of the year either.
No, but because there wasn't.
No samurai. Anyway,
because of that. Because we don't have a spot for it. No. But I want to ask, Nick. Food Wars came and went within this year. Can you remember where Food Wars was at the start of 2019?
Was it during the test with the old man as the judge? The guy who Soma gave the meal and was like, I hope this, makes you want to actually live as opposed to just wait for death.
You expected a lot more to have happened in this year. No, we were we were a little bit beyond that. It was the fight where Soma basically beats the Nazi chainsaw girl.
Okay, so
it's
that's not actually much further beyond that then.
It's not like crazy further. Like the trials were basically ended, and we had started the actual like final round of the blue or whatever. But essentially, the entire final round of the blue was what the last year of the manga was.
I think that when I think I might have made a comment at the start of the year when that was happening where I was like, I'm not going to remember this at all. So,
Yeah, it's fair.
she's so unnoteworthy.
No, it was, and like I was reading it again, I was like, man, this is still lame and disappointing. I forgot there was like they made like kind of this weird joke that like I don't know. It's just it's stupid. It was really bad. I forgot that they had the Nazi chainsaw girl until I saw her again, and I was like, all right,
Sarge, I think was her name.
yeah.
Samurai 8, Chapter 32, Time Limit. Oh, hey, yeah, so Kotsuga, you should definitely kill your friends, and I definitely believe you'll follow through with this, and I definitely stand to gain a lot from giving you the chance to do this. Oh no, you instead decided to cut free your friend Ryu. But wait, a twist! Ryu takes the sword from Sanda and looks like he's going to kill him with it. And everyone's like, "Oh my God, Ryu, don't!"
Well,
So
it's because Ryu frees himself.
oh, he does.
Yeah, Ryu had loaded gears inside of his body, so they kind of
Oh,
blow
the
up
blades come out.
Yeah.
I barely even paid attention. Okay,
No,
so
it's fine, Nick. It's perfectly understandable. It's just a chapter where they tried to build up the drama that Sanda will kill Ryu, and then Ryu frees himself. So I guess we're supposed to believe that Ryu was good. They go through like 3 shifting loyalties in the span of a chapter. And you're like, yes, this is good storytelling. This is what I came here for.
So Sanda flashes back to when they were all on Dharma's ship, and Ryu was so immediately willing to attack him based over a context misunderstanding. Uh, and so now Sanda's like, "Oh, so I'm a partner, huh?" And Ryu says, "Kotsuga, you actually are a bad guy." But then Sanda looks up, and Ryu is winking. And so Sanda gets up and they both charge towards Benkei instead with their swords, and they manage to slash some tentacles or something off. And it's a flashback again to when Sanda was talking to Ryu and explained that the meaning of winking was it means our little plan is a secret, partner. It's like, okay, this isn't as good as the conversation they had in the last chapter. Like, I get what you were going for, and I'm glad that you decided to make their trust the point of why they were able to attack Benkei, but this could have been done way better. And Benkei's like, "Kotsuga, you rat!" And Sanda's like, "I'm Sanda!" And Ryu's like, "That's right, and Sanda is a good guy." And all of a sudden, all of the restraints come loose because Benkei was hurt a bit, I guess. And so they're like, "Pull out Yoshitsune's key from the device." And then there's a voiceover that says, "Time remaining until Angular Warhead launch, 20 seconds." And the rest of the chapter is actually pretty cool because it's a really fast sequence of stuff that's going towards the time limit. So everything's happening at once. Everyone's trying to get past Benkei or attack Benkei so that they can get to the key. And he manages to snare Ryu and Sanda. He manages to cut apart the samurai.
It's cool except for the one part where 4 dudes jump in unison to get cut down in one swipe. It's just like, I thought it was supposed to be Benkei's a fucking joke, and you guys are actual like trained samurai. Like, I don't understand why you would all fall into the exact same like Delta formation. Jump now! Like,
Everyone get in a perfect arc.
Everyone, make sure you're in perfect swing distance.
Yay! Perfect. Hachimaru jumps in. An's prayer allows him to cut through Benkei's blade and deliver a huge blow to his weird mass. But as he tries, this frees Ryu, and he tries to get further, but he is stopped by something hitting him. I don't know. Hachimaru tries to get through, but he's stuck in between the multiple halves of the form that he cut through. But finally, in the link up between Send the Silent and some guy, he does a rocket punch and sends it through the opening, and his hand is going right for the key, and it managed to grab the hand right as we've reached the time countdown of 2, and that's where the chapter ends.
So Send the Silent saves the day, Nick.
He's so smart and such a good planner.
Our hero.
Like I said, I actually do like the second half of the chapter where
Mm.
everyone's rushing in and we get, it feels like there's all this tension building up as the timer's going down and people are being stopped one by one, but it's gradually getting a little bit closer. The whole misdirection thing with Ryu and Sando was not very well done, though. And again, there's too many characters that have left no goddamn impression that are involved in this sequence. Imagine if, like, instead of being four nameless guys, it were just one person that you had come to know and they were trying to leap past and suddenly they got cut in half. How much more effective that would be. So,
Yeah. I think for me the part that really kills me is how they execute the Sonda like teaming up with Ryu thing, because like I get it, but the part that's strange is that Sada's is told like, hey, kill Ryu. And he goes up and he starts to kind of give his little speech of like, I'm Katsuga. I kill people like you and I get paid, but my real name is. And it looks like he's trying to swing his sword, but you can't really tell what he's thinking. And then Ryu frees himself, and you're like, okay. And then he has like the thread over there, and then they do their little like winking bit. Like I do kind of enjoy that callback and payoff, but there's nothing in that moment to say like, oh, does Ryu sense that Sanda doesn't know what to do here? That he doesn't want to kill him, but he doesn't know how to save everybody, or like at what point did Ryu just always have this ability to kind of break like the parts there kind of don't line up to make a cohesive like from here to here, like it's just kind of all over the place and doesn't really lend itself well to that big emotional payoff when they're supposed to work
yeah.
together. Like I'm like, for a moment I had to say, I was like, was he going to just kind of kill him because he didn't know what else to do, or did he always like if the wink had happened here when Ryu was stuck
Yeah.
and Sanda didn't know what to do,
Like
I feel like
if he winks at him after saying something kind of ominous sounding,
yeah.
and that communicates what they have to do, and then Sonda cuts him free and they go after Benkei or something.
Or even if he's just like, I think I may have to kill you. He's like, you do what you need to, wink. Or something like that, where I'm like, okay, now this whole exchange makes a lot more sense. But because the wink happens later, it's just sort of odd.
Yeah. It's almost as if you can't really buy necessarily that Sonda was making the choice to actually break away from Ben.
Yeah. That's I think where the big problem there is.
Mm.
All right, Nick, let's talk about We Never Learn. And we'll have a little bit more to talk
Hold on. With Zipman.
I forgot the thing even exists. Go ahead. I didn't even read it.
They beat the cutie person, and I will say there's a lot of stuff that's being alluded to in this chapter, but neither Kagami or Koshiro know exactly what the hell's going on. There's a moment where Kagami says to the guy who was inside the cutie suit that, you didn't act the way that Cutie would. All your poses and stuff like that were on point and everything. But no matter the reason, Cutie would never attack anyone who is not her enemy. If you do that, that makes you Dark Cutie, right? So don't let all your effort go to waste. Rewatch all of Cutie again. Basically telling him, meditate on this by being a massive nerd and think about what you've done. And then they rush off with the broken cutie suit in tow, and Kagami's like, "Hey, Koshiro, did you know that guy?" And Koshiro's like, "No, I just played along so that they wouldn't figure out our identity." So like, great, so you don't know any more about what's going on, because there's all this stuff about mind transfers and true forms and everyone fulfilling their greed and stuff. And it's like, what does any of this mean? We'll find out later. Allusions to later reveals, basically. That's it. But they have learned at least that the consciousness transfer thing, the soul transfer technology, means that it's possible to actually get Koshiro back into his human form. Although he does say later, wait a minute, oh wait, we incinerate your body. And he's like, no, that was a dummy. My real body's in with all my caretakers and stuff. Great. Koshiro then says that they should stop calling themselves Jackman and call themselves something else. So he proposes Flyman, which I'm like, what, you mean like a zipper fly?
It's funny to me because it's just like that Simpsons episode where it's like the B sharps come back. So everybody's like, they're doing like all thing, B shark singing on the rooftop. And it's just a guy who's like, hello, human fly here. As he's climbing up a building with suction cups. It's like, oh, come on, guys. It's been all night dyeing my underwear.
Kagami actually proves this flight, my mistake. So Koshiro's like, can't you think of something better than that? But Kagami's like, okay, conceptual, like two people as one. And how about Zipman? And so we get the point here that the zipper thing is not just literally a zipper or a suit that is, wrapped around you that way. It is, a zipper is two lines that are bound together by stacking them on top of each other, like the two brothers in the one suit. So that's pretty cool. And then after they've decided on that, they go to do more preparation and try to figure out more stuff and try to figure out who this enemy organization is. And we cut to a mysterious evil organization that is in a bathhouse. Okay. And there's an Optimus looking guy and a Godzilla looking guy and a giant fucking baby. And then there's a character who has like a sword and a flaming crown thing and says that the key is China and that she'll be a perfect addition to my party. I'll enlist her to help defeat that traitor Jackman. The plan is to get close to her as a human so I can make her talk. I'll use the transformation spell and infiltrate. It was all right, but it's really weird to have all this stuff where like nobody knows what the hell's going on. Because I kind of want answers. So, anyway, Chris,
now
what have we never learned?
We never learned, Nick. Question 141: some smile and some sob at a pizza bet and ... We actually have a lot to talk about. Not just
there's
this,
a
but
lot
also the meta world of We Never Learned as well has a lot to talk about. So, it starts. The results are out. We start with Asumi. It's her at the giant board scene as she passed her medical university exam, and we see her there with all of the people from her maid cafe, and it looks like her mom. I don't think her dad's there, so I assume he's at the clinic.
No, it doesn't look like he is. I will say that like every single time you get the results in this chapter, there's a moment where it looks like the character briefly might have failed, and then it turns out they passed.
Yeah, so we see Asumi fall to her knees, and everyone's like, oh, and then she says, thank goodness, I made it, and she starts crying, and all of the people start lifting her into the air and saying, you did it, hooray, way to go. We cut over to Ruka, and they see they got the letter in, and she's it's her dad saying, how can this be? I don't want you to go overseas because you passed. Like, it's all like the set off payoff sort of thing. We see like text messages between the girls. We see that the other two are basically going to get their results at the same time. Uega's also there, and he makes a deal with them. He's like, all right, you guys are too nervous. How about this? We're going to count to 3, and we're going to look at the same time, okay? 1, 2, 3. And then we cut over to Kirisu's office, and they all came in, and they all look like, particularly Ogata looks really downtrodden. And they're like, oh my God, what are you saying? And immediately, Kirisu's like, it's okay. Like, don't take it too hard. It's not the end of the world. No matter what path you choose for the future, the effort you've invested will serve you well. And she's like, no, it's not that. It was just really disappointing because they're about to do their 1, 2, 3 thing, and Ogata just opens her eyes and Sekijou shows up. I was like, we both made it. That's awesome. We'll get to go to the same campus together.
With my friend, my best friend.
And then we can stay in our rooms together and maybe make out.
Sekijou, like one of these days, just like stares out of the picture, just like, and Chris won't get his pizza.
Oh no! So
this is the only way I'll ever get people to leave me alone about this pizza bet.
Yeah. So Sekijou accidentally told them. So Ogata's really angry, but yeah, they all passed, all 3 of them. And Kirisu goes up and she hugs them. She says, "You're all very amazing. I'm so proud of all of you." And, I'm so sorry. I was hard on you the whole time. I want you to know I love you. So they all cry.
She's actually crying while she's telling them this. Yeah.
Yeah. So they have a very emotional moment. And there's like a narration. Sensei gave us glimpses of that part of her every now and then when she got drunk, but in the end, that's how she really is. She really is a very nice person deep down.
She really does love her students, as we learned in that whole arc about her.
Yep. So Yuiga is walking back home, I presume, and he passes by Iruka. And she's like, oh, wow, that's what a story. I'm so happy that, Ogata and Firmino passed, And Yuiga's like, yep, just thinking about it makes me tear up again. She's like, I'm really happy for you too. And all of us. She's like, yep, and now that we're finally done cramming all the time, we're free. Oh, by the way, one more thing, Naruyuki. I love you. And she's like, and all this time I promised myself I'd tell you when your exams were over. So I love you. I'm crazy about you. And that's where our chapter ends.
This was quite a shock to suddenly get this moment.
It's a shock in the sense that she's so fucking confident about it, which has not generally been Iruka's thing. Now, she did mention for a while that her big hang up with telling Yuiga she didn't want to add stress or confusion to him during this like very stressful studying time. So it makes sense that she's like, exams are done. You got your answer. I love you. And she wants to get out there. Now, the thing that's very notable, so the We Never Learn anime has just ended. It ended early, and it did an anime-only ending, because obviously the ending hasn't been made here yet. And I guess if you're still watching anime, you don't want it spoiled, skip ahead. I don't know, 20 seconds, whatever. Probably longer. Who knows? I don't know. But in that, they did decide which girl sort of quote-unquote won, and it was Iruka.
I have not heard this.
It was Iruka.
This is the first time hearing about this.
From what I understand, she was also revealed to be the firework girl. So I'm not 100% positive on all the details of that. That's what I kind of gathered from people in the Discord talking about it. But Iruka won out in the end. So it's interesting that as the manga is coming to an end, she's the one revealing her sort of feelings in this big glamorous way. So who knows? Maybe we're getting a sneak peek, or I don't know.
I do not know, especially because I was going to say until you said that.
Sorry. It's heavily implied she's the fireworks girl.
Okay.
But that.
I was going to say until you said that the fact that Iruka is the first of the girls to actually confess to Yuiga makes me think she's not going to be the girl he winds up with if we follow like Nisekoi rules, which of course Susui Sensei was an assistant on that series. And it just kind of seems to generally be the sort of way that romantic comedy harem series tend to go in terms of like, well, we're winding down now. We've got to start eliminating possible love interests until we're down to like the last two. That would seem to be it, but that doesn't necessarily need to happen. You could always have it be that this is taking us into the final actual step of the series of Yuiga realizing that he could possibly have feelings for any of the girls surrounding him and trying to actually have to deal with that. Mm-hmm. I have no idea how long this is going to last. I would bet that the series is probably going to wrap up this year, because the point of the series has been about them trying to follow their goals, get into these universities, and that has happened.
That is this chapter. This is it. They all succeeded.
Yeah, they did it. They crossed the finish line. Yes, there are other things that can be wrapped up, and there are individual character things that can still happen in terms of bringing final resolution to them and bringing final resolution to character relationships. But the main conflict has been resolved successfully. We won. But now the 7 Deadly Sins has proven that doesn't mean shit. But I would guess that probably around halfway through this year, the series is going to be done.
Yeah, I would not be surprised if within a handful of months we start hearing word that it's winding down officially. It may even go quicker than that. I mean, depending on how this chapter goes, you could very easily be like, all right, let's start wrapping things up.
Yeah, or we're done by the end of the month or something.
Yeah, I mean, who knows? But this is a super good chapter. It's nice seeing the emotional weight. I think the Asumi one probably hit me the most because she doesn't have the rest of the characters around her. It's just all those people within her personal circle, and her being so ecstatic that she passed, and her whole like friend circle and her coworkers like throwing her up into the air, congratulating her. It's a very sweet moment, especially knowing she's failed once before, and how much that's weighed on her. But all the girls and characters got their moments, and it's really nice.
I was really happy to see the Kurisu thing. I was glad that everything was kind of finally wrapped up with this, original four that were involved with each other in terms of, Kurisu was the tutor for these girls, and she's finally able to kind of let the walls down, drop the Ice Queen act, and just be happy for her students that we know that she's cared about, but now she's able to actually express that to them. And yeah, seeing Asumi, who had failed once before, managed to succeed this time, and she's so relieved. And then Haruka's confession, which was the most surprising part of this chapter, that she just suddenly does it. And well, how is this going to turn out? So this was probably my favorite chapter that we got this week. Just a lot of really good positive feelings, but also a lot of, hey, here's a thing you've kind of been waiting for in about 5 times in a row, basically. So
yes. Now, Nick, this is without a doubt the hardest one because
we never learned those one shots.
Do you know where We Never Learned was at the start of 2019? It's okay to take that. I will say that is correct. It was a one-off chapter.
One-off.
I'll give it to you if you can guess which girl it was.
Asumi.
You cocksucker. You cocksucking fuckhead. You goddamn it.
Was it the one that introduced the Dr. Fish?
That was it exactly.
Yeah!
Now I'm suspicious. Now I'm like, hold on a moment.
I did not prepare for that, I swear. But I was thinking about it, and I was like, how many Dr. Fish chapters are there? So I'm doing really good.
I'm just going to start making up answers for the next one. I'll be like, no, sorry. Dr. Stone actually hadn't yet. Senku wasn't frozen yet, actually. It's
never going to get like the Promised Neverland, I can tell you that much. All right. Chris, for the first time of the new decade, Dr. Stone.
It's time to get stoned. Owned. Boom, you put 2020 in there.
Oh, wow.
Yep.
Z equals 134, Commander Face-Off. The Petra Beam has been set off in the middle of the island, and Senku is like, all right, I've got to crack through this Petra Beam. Ukyo shouts out to everyone that he's like, I've got to tell them what I learned, and he says, the device is voice-activated, you have to specify its range and number of seconds, and we cut away. We cut away to Mose and to Hyoga, and they have a little bit of a post-combat, camaraderie kind of moments, because Hyoga observes, like, well, we're going to get petrified, and both of the factions involved here consider us to be very dangerous, so they probably won't revive us again. And Moses is really upset because this means he won't really get a rematch. But he says, hey, if we ever do break free, those centuries of polishing you mentioned, I like to take a crack at that pipe spear stuff. And Hyoga says, as long as you seek to do it well, the gates of the Owari Kanryu style will always be open to you. Aww. And then they freeze up. We get a quick little flash of everyone being frozen and ending with Senku with this kind of grimacing expression on his face with his arm outstretched as his fingers are starting to turn to stone. And I have to wonder, because, spoilers for the end of the chapter, Senku is depetrified. I wonder if what he's doing is like he threw up the revival formula into the air or something like that, so it would like land on him. But I don't know if he has that level of accuracy. We'll find out next chapter one way or the other. But...
I mean, I presume you could argue that he's such a scientific genius he could just figure out the trajectory of it if he needed to. But it's worth noting we see his left hand, I think, start to stone over, and I don't know if we see that hand at the later part of the chapter. Yeah, we just see his...
we don't really see the tips of his fingers, which is the part that got petrified. But yeah.
So maybe he still is a little stoned or something like that. Who knows?
He's got a little bit of the The post. I don't know terminology for weed. Sorry.
He's got that
Fucking.
post-stoned high, I guess. I don't
I
know.
guess yeah. That's the.
It's like if you don't get hangover from weed.
Anyway, the petrification beam takes over the entire island and further out to sea a little bit even, stopping apparently just short of the Perseus, as Ibarra throws his arms up into the air triumphantly. He then gets in a little canoe, goes back to the coast, and triumphantly steps on someone's back, and he's just giggling to himself, and he's like, "Oh, the last one on the island." And he looks at one woman and is like, "Oh, she's such a lovely figure, but even all stony, makes me feel lonely. But oh well, the sorcerers possess revival waters, and I know that." So he plans, I guess, on reestablishing, his kingdom essentially afterwards. But on his way to go to the mountain, where Orashi is with the petrification device, he sees various members of the Kingdom of Science all lined up in a row, all holding their hand up in the air. And he's like, what the hell are they doing? He also happens to see Soyuz, and he recognizes him. And we get a flashback of him basically taking over the kingdom, using the device to petrify Soyuz's father, and then coming across a baby Soyuz and being like, infant or not, to pass down the 100 tales, generations of masters have taken wise with impressive memories. This child will remember all he sees. So he goes after him, but a woman who looks very similar to Ruri snatches up the baby and rushes off and manages to escape with him in her arm. And she also manages to protect herself by wielding a shield. So kind of a bit very clearly like some sort of predecessor to or family member of Ruri and Kohaku's because of demonstrating both their abilities. However, we see as she sails away that she's got some sort of a blood stain on her torso. So I'm sure we'll get all of the gaps in that filled in terms of exactly how Soyuz came to Ishigami Village and all that stuff. Mm-hmm. Anyhow, Ibarra mocks Soyuz because now he's gone. He hefts up a big rock and smashes Orashi's body so he can get the petrification device out of his stomach. And then he sees some footprints. So he's like, huh. So, and then he hears a crackling similar to the one that would come from the transmission device in the earring. So he follows the sound and he comes across the beast that fled from the boat, the Science Kingdom's little vehicle, looks inside, and he's like, huh, okay, there's no creature in here. It's just more sorcery. And then it turns from a cell phone inside of the vehicle, a voice comes that says 5 meters, 1 second. And it was really cool.
That is the coolest fucking moment in this goddamn series so far when he opens that 5 meters, 1 second. Like, holy fuck! Oh, man, if it actually happened.
Toss the device away immediately. It doesn't work, though. So Senku suddenly emerges from the underbrush nearby, and he's thinking, says aloud to himself, I wonder if Ukyo misread the situation. It's probably actually that you've got to be up close to the device when you give the command. But that would have been so cool if that had worked.
Oh, man, it would have been the perfect fucking, crazy shot there, yeah.
So we get this big 2-page spread, the two of them staring down each other. Senku looking confident. He's got the cell phone strapped to his back. Ibarra in shock, asking, how are you alive? And I guess we'll have to wait to find out exactly how that happens. Yeah. But really cool chapter.
Indeed. Now, Nick, can you guess where Dr. Stone was at the start of 2019?
It's going to be difficult because I have a rough idea of events that happened, but I don't remember because Dr. Stone has an odd pacing to it.
Mm. It moves relatively quickly.
Yeah. I am going to say that it was the bread making chapter with Francois.
No, it was actually, I guess at that point it would have been a little bit after that. It was
Oh,
actually in the hot air balloon chapters with Ryusui.
okay. Well, I had thought about saying the one where they get the message from the Y man, but I think that that happens after that.
That
So,
happens a good deal because this actually is when they're still searching for oil. I guess that would have been actually the bread making chapters would have been afterwards because first they're looking for oil to then get the ships ready to start sailing off and picking the people, and then like actually a lot of that happened like at the start of that sort of chapter, like that chapter sort of like a lot of like little small stuff prepared, and then probably about half the year has just been this arc, like this singular the Medusa on this island arc.
okay. Well, yeah, a lot of it was difficult because they had been on doing this part of it for so long at this point that it's kind of hard to remember back to when it's more the Age of Exploration stuff, which is a lot more what I think of in terms of what happens in Doctor Stone. You know, here's the thing we've got to do, so we've got to invent this thing. And when it does that, it's a lot more difficult to figure out exactly when things happen because you've got to do the next thing and do the next thing and do the next thing and do the next thing, as opposed to this sequence has been a matter of more kind of cause and effect.
Yeah.
This caused this to happen, and that causes us to have to do this, so it's easier to figure out the flow of things. Anyway, uh, but I figured I wasn't going to get Doctor Stone either, so. Chainsaw Man.
Oh boy.
Chapter 52, Lost Love, Flower, Chainsaw. So it's the day after the fight between Reze and everyone else. By the way, still don't know how to say her name. I literally looked it up what the kanji for her name were so that I could figure out how to say it. And then I was like, well, but if it's an if it's just a weird thing of like of an English, how am I supposed to say it? So I was like, whatever. So I don't know. We'll find out eventually, I guess. But people are kind of overseeing the damage that has been done, the deaths that have occurred, and so on and so forth. Someone, I forget this guy's name, but he's saying to Aki that, I've heard that there's this, a fairy tale that Soviet mothers would tell their kids when they scold them, that there's this secret room in the army's ammunition storage filled with kids who have no parents. The kids have no freedom and they're treated like objects and their bodies are used in experiments till they die. And as he keeps on telling this story, we see Reze wearing a baseball cap, mingling with crowds and stuff as she makes her way through the city.
She's doing the MCU disguise approach where you put on a baseball cap and keep your head down and no one will know who you are.
Reze is Black Widow, essentially, in the sense that that was what she did in the second Captain America, and also this is her backstory. So
pretty much.
And yeah, essentially, Reze was raised to be a weapon, and we see her pick up a flower from a crowd as she's making her way through town. She gets on board a train bound for Yamagata, then gets off the train, goes through the station, and as she's making her way through, she passes through an alleyway, and she starts to seemingly get a little bit emotional as she makes her way through it, and then all of a sudden, a fuck ton of rats show up. And the rats cut her off as she starts getting ready to pull the pin on her choker to transform into the bomb devil. All of a sudden, the rats form into a sort of creature that goes, "Me too." And then Mikumo's there. Or Makima, sorry, is there. And she says, "I like the country mouse too." And Reze still's got her finger on the pin as Makima starts talking and says, "My friend has this farm out in the country, and I'll go visit him out there to help with their work a little bit. Rats hide in the soil. They damage the crops. So before the ground can be covered by snow, you have to exterminate them. You do it by digging into the soil and having dogs catch and kill them. And I couldn't tell you why, but I find watching that to be very calming." And Reze makes to pull the pin out of her choker, and suddenly it is cut into pieces, and she can't pull her pin. So she pulls a knife from her back pocket, and Makima just says, "That's why I like the country mouse," as Reze starts trying to dart behind her and attack her, and a fucking javelin comes from above and pierces her through at basically the heart. As the Angel Devil is backing Makima up, she tries to pull her pin with her remaining hand, but Makima stops her as she slumps to the ground. And Reze thinks to herself as she realizes she's going to die, why didn't I kill you the first time we met? Denji, the truth is, I've never gone to school either. And she falls to the ground dead. And Makima looks up at the Angel Devil and says, I told you to come with Aki. You didn't want to make him kill a girl. You're kind, aren't you? And the Angel Devil says, well, I am an angel after all. And we cut over to Denji. He's got a bouquet of flowers with him to give to Reze, who he asked to meet with him there. The shop owner is like, I need to close up now. You're a loser, dude. She was never going to come.
I like that. The dude's just like, yeah, I mean, come on, dude. You had to realize this was going to happen, right? You're a schlub.
The door opens up and Denji reacts to it, but it's power.
It's not even power. It's power marching, like, hand on her hip, fucking, like she's in a marching band. She's like, power. She has, like, a fucking entrance theme or something.
And she's like, I tried to hear by your smell. This place sucks. Ooh, look at these flowers. These would suit me perfectly. Gimme. And she looks at Denji, and he looks at her, and he starts eating the flowers so he doesn't give them to her. And then the flower's like, don't eat them. They're mine, you thief.
It's one of the best things. It's crazy that this chapter could be so heartbreaking and then just end on this hilarious joke where he's like, I don't want to give these flowers to you. I'll just eat them instead. Oh.
And Power's acting like they're already hers.
Like, no, give me my flowers.
This was quite the chapter. It was shocking, it was sad, and at the end it was funny because Chainsaw Man's like, okay, we gotta kind of pull you out of that now. But it is, something that's like, wow, this world really kind of sucks.
It is, and I also kind of enjoy that this is a chapter where we see just how ruthless Makima is. Like, we've kind of known that she's been willing to go that way, but it's always been about characters you don't really care about. Seeing that this is something like just so ruthlessly brings down Reze as she was just outside the fucking cafe to go see
Denji. She accepted his invitation.
Like, you're just like, oh, fucking, of course it's like this. Oh, it's brutal.
Well, because of course, regardless of what Reze was going to do, whether she was going to attack Denji, which Makima may very well suspect that she was going to try and do that. She was carrying a knife with her, for one thing. Or if she was going to try and run off with him the way that Denji wanted to, Makima can't let either of those things happen because Denji is a valuable tool to her. So of course she's going to do this. And there's something very effective about not having the final thing that she does be that she cuts her head off or something like that. Just the fact that she very gently grabs her hand so that she can't pull her pin in order to regenerate. And so she just bleeds out.
And then at the same time, she is giving this whole speech about country mice and how
you're going to spoil my crops.
Yeah, like how I find the murder of them to be this calming thing. It's brutal. You also have to enjoy that the Angel Demon plays a part in this too, where the Angel Demon's like, "Oh, I was gonna show up. I didn't want to make Aki have to do this, so But yeah, it's just really fucking a super strong chapter, emotionally hitting, and then just a great, like, actual hilarious ending, which is very strange. But I don't think there's another way to really describe Chainsaw Man, but this weird blend between the two. And with that said, Nick, where do you think Chainsaw Man was at the start of 2019?
It was somewhere in the Power introduction arc, because that would have been in the first several chapters. So,
can you get more specific than that?
Was it the first chapter she showed up in?
No, it was the chapter after that.
Fuck you.
It was the first chapter they work together. It's the chapter where she squishes that sea cucumber demon with that giant hammer. It's great. What a great year for fucking Chainsaw Man.
Of course, it was a great year for Chainsaw Man. It was the majority of his existence.
Ninja marked you wrong. Fuck you.
Fuck you. All right. The Promised Neverland, chapter 162, musical chair.
That's Seven Deadly Sins.
Fuck you.
Okay.
Oh yeah, that is the next one. My bad.
All right. So Seven Deadly Sins, chapter 337, Merlin.
Jesus Christ, this is an exposition dump chapter.
Look, I'm not here to complain too much, but I want to. If someone from Crunchyroll is listening, for the love of God, I need to talk to whoever does, I guess, the typesetting. Please, for the love of God, never pick a font like this for the exposition, because this was a hellscape to read. It was so hard. I'm reading it here. I'm wearing my glasses at the time too. I'm trying to read this chapter before they start the episode, and I swear to God, I have to move to about here, like an inch away from my screen, to read 90% of the dialogue in this chapter, because it's so much of it, and it's all in this fucking fancy cursive font, and Jesus, there's just a metric fuck ton of it. So
I'm going to read two back-to-back panels here really quick. One is spoken by Meliodas and Bon, which means that they have regular font, and one is spoken by Chaos or whatever.
Yeah.
So Meliodas says, "Just who are you? Show yourself." Bon says, "This smells fishy." The demon Chaos thing says, "Pardon me this one thing, for I cannot part from this lake." So that's the difference, to give you an idea of how difficult it is to read this script.
Yeah.
Where the text is the same size all the way through.
It is very difficult, and we start getting panels where like the panel is still like a regular, like maybe a third of the page, and the text box covers that and has to get like a paragraph in. It is very difficult. Anyway, it's revealed that sort of the being that exists in this lake goes by the Lady of the Lake or the Saint of Chaos. So we finally get our Lady of the Lake one for one here. And they talk about like, yeah, you know what? Melodious like, yeah, it's cool, but I haven't heard anything about some chaos being for 3,000 years. So I don't think this thing even exists. I haven't even heard about it from Merlin. And the bean's like, of course you haven't, because Merlin's been hiding it from you for 3,000 years.
Turns out Merlin's got a lot of secrets.
It is. And maybe it's just because I don't follow the lore of Seven Deadly Sins super tightly, but this felt like a slight retcon too. Because I thought the explanation was that Merlin was specifically the son or the daughter of the Demon Lord.
I don't know.
And the Supreme, like she had both in her, was sort of like the thing they kind of hinted at. Whereas here they express that she's a human. I might just be misremembering it, so who knows. But anyway, she's a human. She was born to like this group of wise men. She was extremely talented. So all anybody ever really wanted her to do was work, but they treated her like shit. I don't know. They give like, this all happens in the span of about 2 pages, and it's really hard to read half the font. And they also don't really have that, like, there's a cut over where they're like, wow, you saved Merlin. Wow, you had such a terrible past. And I'm like, did she? Because from these 2 pages, it doesn't sound that bad. It sounds like she didn't have a parent that loved her, which obviously is bad, but like, it's tough to really tell exactly what happened to her, all of that. I don't know. Melodious eventually saved her. And that was like a big thing. A demon saved her from being like attacked by these wise men. And she saw Melodious and fell in love with him. So, wow.
That's new.
Yeah, Merlin has feelings for Melodious. That's actually pretty crazy. But then she gave herself this very attractive physical form that we kind of know her as, and then froze time so that she would always be in that form, and it was all done to win over Melodious. You know, like, it's kind of interesting. Kind of weird, but kind of interesting. And then that's when she saw Melodious hanging out with Elizabeth. And she's like, well, fuck. God damn it. And we don't really get a ton after that. Like, she said, like, she couldn't learn to hate them. but something in her still troubled her. And then one day, a bunch of wise men talked about chaos, and that's kind of what drove her down this path. There's some lore about the world, how when chaos created the world, it created the supreme deity, the demon lord, and then the sacred tree, and that they gave birth to angels, demons, and fairies respectively, and then chaos created the giants, who were just so dumb and angry and violent that they couldn't really contain themselves, so they made humans instead. And that's kind of where we are. And Merlin spent the next 3,000 years.
And then they made the Chaos Emeralds, and it is from those emeralds that I draw my power.
Exactly. So Merlin spent the last 3,000 years structuring her life around the aim of resurrecting chaos, believing that if she could revive chaos and give rise to the virtually limitless unknown, then her starving heart would most certainly be fulfilled. And not only that, she did other things, like helping to ensure that the true demon lord would be revived, because that would be the only way to kind of drive Melodious's power all the way it needed to. And she was the one who revived Elizabeth's curse to ensure that we'd kind of continue on to the point where we needed to. And she is the one that directed the giant final attack into the lake so that it would be enough power to then kind of revive fucking Arthur the whole time. And you're like, wow, shit, all right.
If you say so.
We're getting a lot. All right. So Merlin was pretty much behind everything. And basically the one takeaway, like, Melodious gets out of it, he's like, you tried to kill Elizabeth? And she's like,
fair enough.
Yeah, I mean, he's right. That's the one thing you're like, what the fuck? And she's like, hey, you know, your objective was one thing, to break the curse on her, but if you'd done that, then you might have abandoned your mission to defeat Demon Lord, and I couldn't allow that. And they're like, so you reactivated her curse? She's like, yes, but I'm also the one who saved her. So it wasn't about killing Elizabeth to drive you to that point, but I needed to remind you. I needed something that would push you. She's all about, like, the ends justify the means if she needs to, but she's not trying to get anybody hurt. She's doing everything she can to protect them.
There's, of course, also a lot of stuff that, you know, the Lady of the Lake is saying a lot of this. So there are clearly some details from Merlin's perspective that we aren't getting yet that are probably going to change exactly how we're meant to interpret this eventually. I'm sure that it's going to turn out that Merlin is not quite so nefarious as this chapter is making her out to be. But obviously this is going to change the way that things are going to be for a while.
And then it basically ends with, like, yeah, it should be no secret, hating someone so much that you want to kill them, but still being able to love them. It's what humans do. And I wonder if Merlin and you, being different races, if you'll ever be able to truly understand each other. Which is sort of an odd sentiment, because it's never really been much of a point to this moment where you're like, oh, demons have less of an emotional intelligence to them or something like that. Like, if you told me Melodious was human, I'd be like, yeah, I mean, I don't, like, if you're trying to say that, they're like, well, demons and angels don't know how to have these complex feelings. It's like, I kind of think that Male and Melodious have proven that
that's
wrong.
Completely false.
I was like, so I don't think that's the case. So, I mean, who really knows? This is a chapter with a ton to digest. I'm sure I glossed over some things and maybe explained some things poorly, but there's just so much to this chapter. It turns out Merlin was actually a Palpatine all along, and that Palpatines and Skywalkers are, like, meant to fight each other all the time. Their families will never stop feuding in some fucking way.
Yeah, didn't you see the vision where Rey went? What an awful movie. Okay, so yeah, I there is a lot to digest, and I'm kind of there with you in terms of I am not familiar enough with Seven Deadly Sins lore to appropriately discuss this chapter without seeing where it leads yet. I don't have enough information for me to expound upon and wonder about. So for right now, I'm just kind of like, okay, what's really going on, Merlin? So I'm sure we'll get that eventually. But hey, it does seem as though with this chapter, it might be more likely that the series is not as close to the end as we thought, even with the whole Demon Lord being defeated thing. Maybe there really is a lot more to explore. So, who knows?
I made a joke about it on Twitter the other day, where I was like, maybe we'll also be talking about Seven Deadly Sins the next decade.
When I said that, yeah, we'd be talking about One Piece for another 10 years, yeah.
And I really don't know. Part of me is like, that's a joke, and I'm like, is it? Like, surely they won't have enough content for the next decade. But if you told me Seven Deadly Sins didn't end in 2020, I'd be like, yeah, I guess I can believe that somehow. I mean, we've wrapped things up like 3 times now, but sure, I guess.
I mean, it's definitely possible to have endings and then new beginnings, and it seems as though it could be establishing that, No,
I'm sorry. Someone in the chat said, would it make more sense if I played Fortnite and saw the promotional Seven Deadly Sins manga? Like,
I heard about that. I heard about that, and I was like, what could possibly... All right. Now let's go to do the Promised Neverland.
Well, before we do that, Nick, where was
Seven Deadly Sins? When they were in purgatory? I don't know.
No, it was actually they were wrapping up the fight with the first demon, and all of the other commandments were flowing into the cocoon thing that all the other ones were at the birth, like the first demon lord. So, not actually like there was a lot to that, and then the conclusion to that fight, and then essentially just the arc we had been seeing recently, where it was
so I overestimated how much actually happened this year.
Yeah.
Promised Neverland, Chapter 162, musical chairs. That's how you decide who gets the title opportunity, Chris.
Did they do that once? Was there a musical chairs?
Eugene was the GM of Raw one time.
You know what? It makes sense.
And Jericho got a title shot by winning a game of musical chairs.
It makes sense in the world of Eugene, which to this day is one of the more confusing characters to ever have to explain. I'm like, I don't know if he was supposed to be special needs, but he wrestled.
He was referred to as a very special boy.
Yeah, but he wrestled a lot. And I think he might have been tag team champion with Hulk Hogan once. I don't remember exactly.
It was Jim Duggan.
Jim Duggan, that's it. I know he tag teamed a lot of legends for a while.
Eventually, everyone hated him.
I had friends at the time who were like, Eugene should be WWE champion. And you're like, yeah, please don't let it happen. And I set up candles in the basement in a pentagon, and I prayed in them every night.
It turns out you prayed a little bit too hard.
I prayed for career inverse of success for him, and eventually it just sent him to the Indies, which I feel really bad about, but I did ensure he was never going to be champion. And I guess I should go down there now to pray for them that this Lashley Lana storyline just ends, but I don't want to set up all the candles. It's a lot of work. Also, it invites a lot of bad spirits into your house.
I've been haunted for the past decade.
My roof drips blood daily.
Every time that it falls on my face, I'm like, at least Eugene was never WWE champion.
and then I cuddle up and met him like, he was never champion though.
Sanju and Mujika are riding around. Sanju's got a plan for who to make the new king of demons. Turns out there's like elder priests and stuff new through his teacher from when he was a boy. They come across them. They're in suspended animation, looking all creepy and kind of like Kyonshis, the Asian vampire things. And so they're not dead because they're in suspended animation. And so he's like, we'll revive them and then make it so that they don't die. And then they'll be revived and that guy's going to be king. They're the only ones who can do it. And Mujika's like, all right, then let's hurry. And because we promised them we wouldn't let anyone die. Okay. Cut over to Ratri, who's with his armies, and they're escorting the kids and so on to Gracefield. They get word that Queen Lagravulima has died, and so he's like, well, that's cool. we'll just, capitalize on this opportunity. Tell all the demons that this is going to be a battle of revenge for the queen, and this way we'll take the throne and the political power. From now on, this world will be mediated under our rule. Look at how big my hand is.
It's huge.
This is how you manipulate puppets, right? By doing this. Then he tells them to tell the search parties to withdraw, and they're like, "Well, what about the children that caused this and killed the queen and stuff?" He's like, "Don't worry, they already know where we're headed. We just have to wait. They'll come to save their friends. They'll never abandon them. Look, they couldn't possibly abandon. What is your name again? Oh, I don't know your name, but I kill you." All right.
Wow.
They're dead. And it's very sad, I guess. And then he says, "Come, you damn food! The children who never grow up! I won't let you end Neverland! We'll settle this at Gracefield!" So even he's like talking about this in really weird poetic terms and stuff. Anyway, they escort all the kids back to Gracefield. Gate opens up and he's like, "Oh, thank you for welcoming us. It's been a while, Grandma Isabella." And it's Isabella, and she's wearing a black dress and she's smiling sinisterly. Dun dun dun.
I mean, it's supposed to be a very huge twist. Like, oh, Isabella is not only still alive, but has also she's the grandma now. So that's pretty crazy. And she's over at Gracefield House. Like, wow. It's kind of sad. It's like saddled with all this fucking ratchery stuff that just means absolutely nothing at the moment. So you're like,
what a well-established character I am. I've been doing stuff in the background, I swear.
Yeah, you're like, wow, holy shit. All right. So I don't know. I was like, maybe if you cut all of the ratchery stuff and you just had a 2-page chapter about how Isabella was still alive, this would have been really effective.
Literally, it's just like not even, there's no dialogue. It's, you just see like Ratchery like occasionally pointing and stuff, the children looking miserable, and then they show up and Grandma Isabella. It was like, yeah, I'd take that.
Yeah. All right, Nick. Here's, I guess, maybe one of the big ones for you. Can you remember where the Promised Neverland was at the start of 2019?
Shit. Had they gotten back to the bunker yet? I think it was pre-time skip. I want to say it was pre-time skip. Were they just getting back to the bunker after the whole thing with Luvis and the phone call? And
it's actually after that. This was the start of the very important mission to get the medicine for Chris.
I completely forgot that happened.
Because I started reading the chapter and I was like, they have to break into a farm? Why don't I remember this? And then I saw like Chris was like, and I was like, oh right, that's why I don't remember this, because this was fucking worthless.
So that would have been after
this was, I believe, because they meet
after they had to flee
Hayate and whatever during this mission. So this is
that was after they had to abandon the bunker after they got compromised and everything. Okay. God, that was the whole thing. Where like, hey, Anna's an important character. Look, she didn't do anything else. What? Promised Neverland doesn't prioritize character writing? The hell you say? Oh, yeah. Okay.
All right. So let's talk then about Black Clover. Page 234, The Messenger from the Spade Kingdom. And I'm flipping through this real quick because I know I read this chapter, but I remember nothing from it.
Yeah.
And okay, I vaguely recall what happened during this. That's right, never mind. Okay. No, this makes total sense. So we found out Yuno is a member of the Spade Kingdom royal family. It was a very important thing. we cut over to the Golden Dawn headquarters where a bunch of people are talking about how the fact, like, yeah, he was called out to his hometown, so he went over there at super speed. Oh, wow, where was it? Like, oh, it was over there. Oh, no matter where he was born, doesn't change the fact he's a brilliant magic knight. And they talk about, like, oh, are you part of his like fan club? Like, no, I just think he's really incredible, and vice captain, after just this small amount of time, he could actually become Wizard King. And then we cut back over, and I don't even know who the other, I guess that's the priest, who's such a fucking non-character.
The guy with the mustache who's going,
yeah. Yeah, I'm shocked.
Yeah, that's the priest. That's the priest who raised Aston. Yes.
So it's like, Yuno's a Spade Prince King, or Spade Kingdom Prince. Wow, I knew he was special, but wow, he's a royal. That, and everyone kind of acts the same way in Black Clover.
Well, he's freaking out over that, and then Sylph is also shouting because she's like, "I totally thought that might be it."
Yeah, well, they're both screaming while they do it. So their text boxes are identical. Just one is screaming out of shock and the other one's excited. Basically, I forget it, what he is. Is he a messenger from the Spade Kingdom or one of the knights from it? The Spade Kingdom dude who revealed everything.
The guy who has to see
Yeah. That guy's like, hey, what's that? Do you have one of the forest spirits serving you? Wow, you really are special.
What's his name,
hey,
Chris? He says it on the next page.
Oh, wow.
I am Yuno, currently of the Clover Kingdom, who you claim to be a prince. And who are you? I'm Ralph.
I'm Ralph, the message guy. So he's like, hey, you know what? Why was a Spade Prince abandoned in the Clover Kingdom? What's your purpose or coming here? He's like, well, my name's Ralph. And the rest sent their thoughts and their magic with me so that I could tell you the whole thing. Now, remember, I want to specify, it was established a couple chapters ago that the Clover Kingdom is a very unique place where very crazy kinds of magic spontaneously are kind of created.
I'll use my fire magic to summon memories.
And then this guy opens his book and he's like, flashback fire magic. You're like, all right, whatever. And we get a full page, 2-page spread of all these fucking memories of people. I don't know. Like, does he have like a camera book or something like that where he like snaps his own face? Like, there's a shot of Yuno's mom saying, "Thank you for being born, my darling." So I was like, was he there to see it? I was like, was he there to see it?
So he used his fire magic to call forth Yuno's own memories, but also there are shots of Yuno as a baby. Mm-hmm. So he says that he says the rest sent their thoughts and their magic with me, including you as a baby, I guess.
And as the entire time this happens, is Yuno's head just like on fire or something? Like, it's just like, that's how it manifests in fires around your head.
Wait. Hold on. She says, my darling. So I guess that's her husband that she's saying that to. Maybe. I don't know.
No, I think that's her saying it to Yuno. Like, thank you for being born, my darling. But again, as you said, it's from Yuno's perspective. So, I mean, who really... Because it's perspective from all over places, basically.
Here's a thought that maybe Yuno's just high from the smoke.
And they specifically just like, hey, here's a magic stone I got a long time ago, and I returned from the strong magic region. Give it to Yuno as an amulet. I'm like, I'm glad we got the rich fucking lore for a special amulet.
Just imagine Yuno as a baby getting this precious magic amulet, and he'd just be like,
or is like Yuno as a baby, does he just stare out into the abyss and like,
I'm gonna be the Wizard King.
He didn't have an Asta yet, so he had nothing. Nothing motivated him. They were like, I think something's wrong with our child. He doesn't do anything.
I'm sure he'll grow a personality eventually.
Like, he's just a late bloomer. Personalities sometimes take 10 years to develop in children, right?
Sometimes they're very, very one-sided.
You just hear like someone on the TV go like, I'm the Wizard King, and he's like, "Did someone say the Wizard King?" He like pops up.
amazing. He's never had the will to get out of his crib before. Now he's just sitting in front of the TV staring at it.
He's trying to open the door. So yeah, that's his flashback. Then there's treason. The Zogratis siblings have attacked the royal castle. The king is, no, the royals are falling one after another. Oh no, they'll kill Yuno if they find him. So I'll have to protect Master Yuno. We'll have to leave. A bunch of mages die protecting Yuno and Ralph as he escapes into the woods. And
but he says at the end, that last man was my father. So the guy with the beard is not Ralph. It's Ralph's father. Ralph is the clean-shaven man that we see a couple of times, who looks like this guy. But so his dad has a beard. That's it.
So wait, the shot. There's one painting where you see a guy with a beard holding Yuno.
That's Ralph's father.
That's Ralph's father. Okay, so Ralph's. That's what I was trying to check. I was like, that's not Yuno's father. They just said the king was dead, didn't they? So.
And again, we're definitely seeing this view from Yuno's perspective.
Yes, I mean, some of these shots we're definitely not seeing from Yuno's perspective, like the shot of the person in the cloak running into the woods with two guys saying we'll handle this. Like, whose perspective would that be? Except for, I guess, the Zogratis siblings or whatever. But I don't know. It's a very odd thing. He's like, hey, I'll protect you. He goes all the way through the fucking strong magic region on his own, which I said is very difficult. And he's like, there's a church over here. They'll be able to. And he's like, Master Yuno, this is my last spell for you, so please leave. And I guess he sends him on like a little like wind platform over to the church. He's like, oh man, thank God I don't have some lame magic like flame memories or something like that, or I'd never be able to do it.
As he's flying through the air, he passes over the river that Moses is floating down. Overhead, Kal-El's capsule comes crashing through the They're just all going past each other at the same time.
They all high five. There's a shot of all the babies each other high fiving each other.
And then Ray's also there. Baby memories.
He's like, and I was there too.
No, you weren't.
And everyone clapped. Like, okay. So Yuno's like, oh, jeez. He's like, hey, with as much magic you have, I'm sure you already know, but I've just shown you are things that actually happened, that none of it was false. And I'm like, I guess that's just how that magic works. I don't know.
False images are way harder to make.
Not with flame magic. Flame memory magic. And he says, that last man was my father. He had served the house for generations. It is just us. Many citizens are praying for your safety. And he says, even if that's the case, I'm Yuno of the Clover Kingdom. But before we can kind of get more to that, there's an emergency call to Yuno. And it says, emergency vice captain, the Golden Dawn headquarters is under attack. And we cut over, we just see like a text box saying, can we go as berserk as we want, Lord Xenu? And Lord Xenu says, we're here for the arcane stage mages. Everyone else you can kill.
Dun, dun, dun. I believe that this is the guy that we saw who mopped the floor with all the Diamond Kingdom mages that Luck and the others were spying on before, which means that everyone's probably going to be perfectly fine.
Yeah,
he's not going to kill anyone. Like,
Black Clover has to kind of earn a lot of goodwill, and having something like this happen where you're just like, is he not going to be chased off by the fucking dude with glasses or something like that? Like, oh, this is my big heroic sacrifice. Oh, all my wood magic is coming at you, or whatever my magic was. And then, like, at the end of it, they're like, he used everything except the last bit that would kill him. He'll recover just fine.
He'll have some bandages and have to be put under a glowing thing that'll heal him for a while.
Yeah. We're going to send him to Wakanda, and they'll push vibranium beads into him, and he'll be fine. You're like, I guess that's just how this world works.
Yeah. Anyway.
Nick, can you remember where Black Clover was at the start of 2019?
Was it when the former villains decided to team up with Asta and go and rescue everyone?
That was a little bit after that. So this
Oh,
was the fight against Elf Gauche, where Henry had like kind of a flashback, but he didn't actually do anything really in that chapter except they make like a
okay.
Black Bull headquarters out of glass or something like that. So it's very close to that point, but yeah, it was a little bit before that, I think.
Damn. Oh well. All right. One Piece chapter 966, Roger and Whitebeard. This chapter features Roger and Whitebeard. So, as we established in the previous chapter, Whitebeard and Odin and Roger's crew have all wound up on the same island. Odin storms in through Roger's crew, managed to easily mow down a few of them, but as Raleigh and Gabon, he's got Sun Pirates emblems seemingly on his shirt. Anyway, they step in to deal with him, and Roger just calls out, "Stop!" And then he kind of like does this goofy run past them. He's like, "I wouldn't want you guys to get hurt." And then you're like, you just want to fight him. We know you just want to fight him. And so they clash, and Roger basically knocks Odin on his ass, just sends him flying with one slash. And I do really like that Odin immediately is just like, "Hey!" just starts running back towards him. But before he can get back, Whitebeard steps in and they clash. And their blades don't actually even touch each other. They're just so much weight behind each of their blows that the air between them clashes and sends out this huge, massive explosion of power. And each of them kind of grin as they look at each other, greeting each other after seeing each other for a while. And then both of them go, "Drop your valuables and leave," at the exact same time. And then they laugh. And essentially what happens is they have an incredibly long drawn out battle, which is just kind of glossed over as their crews clash. And then by the end of it, everyone's just drinking together and having a good time. So they're too evenly matched, basically, for them to even bother fighting. And so now they're just hanging out and having a good time. There is a bit where the guy in Whitebeard's crew that we were actually talking about last time with the hat notes that Shanks and Buggy have, are just standing there, and despite the fact that they look really young, they've got the attitudes of grown men. And then we cut over to them, and they're talking about the guy in the hat. They're like, "Hey, I heard that he didn't sleep at all during the ceasefire last night." And then they have a weird conversation about it, being like, "Oh, wow, he's never slept in his life, I've heard. Oh, wow, what a lucky guy. I bet his life has been twice as fun." And Buggy's like, "No, he's really scary is what I'm trying to say."
Did we mention that's Blackbeard?
It is Blackbeard.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, it is Blackbeard. It was also confirmed there's also been a drawing Oda's done of him that shows Black, like in an SBS or something like that, that it was like Blackbeard with a moon behind him, like kind of sniffling. So kind of adds a little bit more context when you find like, oh, he's never slept in his life, so maybe that's part of the reason why. So
and also why his eyes are so messed up too. So
it's a man who never dreams, Nick. That's why he's got the biggest dream of them all.
That was poetic. Yeah. Well done.
Thank you.
Odin and Whitebeard and Roger are all having a conversation as Roger reacts in shock when Odin's like, "Yeah, I can read this." So then he's like, "Oh, how do you possess this text?" And they say, "This is the secret cipher of the Kozuki clan of Wano, passed down strictly from generation to generation." And Roger gives a bit of exposition saying, we landed at the destination of the final log pose where no one had ever reached before, a place called the Lodestar Island. But when we disembarked, giddy at what we might find, we realized that it was not the final island. The needles of the log pose went haywire, refusing to point out a new destination. But there is one more island, and only by going there will the unprecedented circumnavigation of the globe be complete. And so he brings up, the red poneglyphs, and he says, the problem is that these are the poneglyphs that the world government has long forbidden anyone to read. You thought they were just cultural relics? Think again. They're the map that we need. So the stories say that a vast treasure awaits on the final island. The government says, don't go there. That only makes the stories about treasure more believable. And if we can get there, we'll be the greatest pirate crew in the world in both name and fact. And then he starts to basically be like, and then I'll be, and it seems like he's about to say, I'll be king of the pirates. And then Whitebeard suddenly starts laughing. He's like, are you serious, Roger? Why are you a little boy? But Odin is reacting in shock about all of this. And he's like, oh, who is this man? And so Roger proposes to Whitebeard, like, hey, let me borrow Odin and have him be part of my crew for 1 year. It's the last thing I'll ever ask of you. With him, I'm certain that I can reach the final island. And he even actually gets down and bows while asking for this. And he begs Odin to come with him. And Whitebeard's like, no, you're like stealing my family from me by asking to do this. But Odin says in narration, my blood cried out to me. It asked, why can the Kozuki clan read these letters? Why have I come across Roger at this moment in time? And before I knew it, the words were leaving my mouth on their own. And he says, will you let me go with him? And Whitebeard gives the same look of like, ugh, that they've been doing all throughout this part of the flashback. But he's like, all right, 1 year. Everyone else agrees to remain behind on Whitebeard's ship. Whitebeard is throwing a bit of a pouty fit now that he has to say goodbye like this. And everyone says, all right, goodbye. And Roger sets off with Odin as part of his crew now. And then, of course, it turns out that, Momonosuke and Hiyori are with them along with Toki. And Dogstorm and Cat Viper there too. Like, we decided it was more fun going with you.
Well, fair, I guess.
So that's how Izo ended up as a member of Whitebeard's crew. Was that everyone else left? Odin, gets to know Roger's crew and everything. We get a little bit of a montage of their adventures together and hanging out together and stuff. And then they bring up, Roger's got like a year to live at best. And so Roger says, yes, I've got to make my time left count. And we see them going up to Skypiea, coming across, the Golden Bell and everything. And then, of course, they come across the poneglyph in Skypiea. And they're like, it was easy to find this stone. And Wano is, reading, and they're like, okay. And then Roger says, carve a message for me. I hereby guide this document to its end, just like this. And we get a narration from Odin to end the chapter saying, show it to me, Roger. Show me the final chapter of your grand, life-spanning adventure. All right. So, a lot of connecting the dots kind of happens in this chapter. We kind of figured that this would be about what would happen, but we also, get a little bit of like, oh, hey, we actually get to see the message being carved. So that's a nice little detail.
Yeah.
I wonder how much longer we're going to be in this. I get the feeling that the flashback is in its final stretch, because presumably after this point, we've got to get to the point where we wrap up Odin's journey and have him actually get back to Wano so that all the stuff can happen that leads to his death and everyone being sent forward in time.
Yeah.
So, but geez, that's still a lot of ground to cover. So.
I said there's a lot to actually digest within all that too. So it's cool. It's really nice to see we're getting more of this lore of the Gold Rogers and Whitebeard stuff, and actually feeling like it is kind of as epic as it's always been out to be. It's not as like mind shattering if we had read this maybe like 5 arcs ago or something like that, because we've slowly gotten to be more accustomed to a lot of the bigger aspects of One Piece. But it's nice that this doesn't feel like an afterthought of things, that it feels like you are getting at least rewarded for being like, oh, I've really been interested in Gold Roger's crew and how he acted. You're like, oh no, like we're starting to actually just get scenes of Gold Roger talking and hanging about. So I'm like, that's pretty crazy.
All right.
Nick,
well,
do you remember where One Piece was at the start of 2019?
No, they were in Wano.
Yes. Yeah, you are correct on that.
Well, while we were looking over stuff to talk about, like the year-end rewards and stuff, I did read something that was about halfway through the year that helps me kind of narrow it down a little bit. But even so, I get the sense that it's something that's not particularly, oh, that's when this thing happened, I don't know. Would it have been... This might be a little bit too far forward in the year. Was it the chapter where we got like the big introduction to Komurosaki as in Hiyori,
Yeah, no, that's it exactly. This was like sort of the chapter where Luffy had been in prison, and we find out that Komurosaki like has this relationship with men where she kind of tricks them. It's like the big parade.
Really?
So it's like the big parade on down the way. Yeah.
Damn it. I got good at this all of a sudden. I'm so bad at this generally. I don't know. Maybe I managed to carve out some of it from last year.
I mean, there was a lot in there, but yeah, I mean, we've kind of had a lot. I mean, it's weird when you think about how at the start of 2019, there was really no clue how One Piece was going to go, like how this arc was kind of going to go. But it's just kind of crazy how much stuff kind of came together after that.
Cool. All right. Well,
now, Nick, before we get to anything else, this is the most important one.
Most important one.
Where was World Trigger at the start of 2019?
Well,
this
World Trigger
I feel like
just come back.
I feel like I'm throwing you a gimme here because there's also 2 chapters here.
Right. I mean, it was during Tamakoma 2's first of the 2 battles that they've been part of in the rank wars this year. So I don't know exactly what part of the battle it was, but I know that much.
So you're like, it's one of the 2 fights that encompassed this year, basically.
Pretty much.
Well, specifically, I guess in case you were wondering, it was still in the Tamakoma Azuma squad, Kageura squad, Suzanari 1 match. This was the one where basically we kind of wrapped up beating everybody else to finally get to the point where it was just Azuma squad versus Tamakoma 2.
So there's been a lot of planning chapters this year.
Yes.
Then
we had a lot of planning chapters. There was also a couple chapters to kind of wrap things up as well, but I think we still hadn't gotten like Chica's big, like, I'm just going to blow up the fucking mall moment and stuff like that. So there were a lot of characters who had really big years, and I think Chica was one of them.
Speaking of big years, that transitions us relatively well into talking about, just how we feel about the year of manga that we've had.
Yeah. And to talk about some superlative awards too, as you can say. So, I want to thank Ninja X3i, who has been over the course of this year kind of gathering everything for us and putting us all together. One thing we didn't really discuss was the recommendations we would take, going over what we recommended in 2019 and kind of giving like our favorites on it. So I'll really quickly run down what we had this year. We had 87 Clockers, the overclocking manga that ended up being a lot more misogynistic than I expected it to be. We did.
It doesn't seem like it would have a lot of room for that, but it did.
Yeah, they managed to find a way in there. Pokemon Adventures Diamond, Pearl, and Platinum. We talked about Yu-Gi-Oh! Please Don't Bully Me Nagatoro with the girl who bullies the guy, and then eventually kind of they fall in love or something. The Climber we took a look at. Girlsaurus, which was just about the bunch of fat jokes about some girl.
There was other unfortunate things, but yes, that was the starting point. Yes.
We did Stone Ocean, JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Part 6. We did Bloom Into You, which I think at the time, I may have even mentioned during that recap, I was like, this is the one that at the end of the year, when I'm looking over, I'm going to say, I have no idea what this series was about. And if so, I was 100% correct, because I have no idea what Bloom Into You is.
It was a series about 2 lesbians who fell in love.
Okay. No idea.
Okay.
Then we had Spy Family, which was a big lip lifter.
Yeah.
Before we then talked about Kodomo no Jikan. And then Harem End. And then Happy Sugar Life. And
Tokyo. Out of those
Red
4,
Bull.
it's like Happy Sugar Life. It looks pretty damn good, actually.
And then we finished off the year. We added Chainsaw Man to the recap, but we did a recommendation for it. And then Buster Keel and the Electric Tail of Pikachu were the two big ones at the end of the year. That year. So
This
Nick,
was the first. This was the first time that we actually started reading a recommendation, and then we're just like, no. So there was an odd stretch in the second half of this year.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So Nick, what would be your favorites of the year?
My favorite series that we covered this year were Please Don't Bully Me, Nagatoro. Okay. That is a series that I still go and check on to see if there are new chapters that are out. It starts off very troubling in terms of the fact that this girl is just flat out bullying this guy, but eventually their relationship grows into something very, very cute. Second behind that is actually Bloom Into You. I thought it was a very interesting series. I know they did not really capture your interest, but it did mine, and it was pretty much almost done by the time that we covered it. So I got to read the finish of that. And then Stone Ocean. I really liked reading that one. Now, in terms of like Spy Family, Chainsaw Man, stuff like that, I tend to compartmentalize the recommendations that we cover that we then cover later very differently. I know that there was one year where I said Fairy Tail was one of my favorite recommendations because it led to us covering the series and I had a lot of fun talking about it. But I think that I was a little bit more hard up for good series to talk about that year. So,
well, so I'll say, so my favorites probably were, I like Yu-Gi-Oh! I really enjoyed having read Yu-Gi-Oh! And being able to say like, now I get it. Now I've read the whole thing. I've read all of season 0 or whatever you want to call it, everything before Duelist Kingdom, and you get so much more of a complete picture to what actual insanity Yu-Gi-Oh! Is, having enjoyed all that. So I really love that. The Climber, I'm going to say, is one of the better ones just because it's such a really different manga too. And
it starts off really shitty,
yes,
and then becomes very interesting.
It's astonishing that transition over it too. And then I'm probably going to say, like, I feel it's cheating to say Spy Family because it was so good and it was just in the year, but we only read it when it was like 11 chapters.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So if I were to take out like Chainsaw Man and Spy Family and those ones,
Buster Keel.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest. There's a part of me that's like, is it Harem End? Because it was one of the ones I hated the least. I guess Electric Tail of Pikachu's interesting. I would say, in lieu of anything else, don't even put me down for a third one if I'm not thinking these other ones. None of them are not necessarily that bad. It's just nothing really like stands out. Like, ooh, I'm so glad we read that one or something like that.
Right.
But I will note what the audience said. Their top 3 best were Spy Family, Chainsaw Man, and then JoJo's Bizarre Adventure.
Not surprising at all. But...
And then the worst 3 were Kodomo no Jikan, Tokyo Road Ghoul, and Harem End.
Oh, what am I supposed to say were my least favorites? I will say that Tokyo Red Hood, because I didn't read it, is not in my bottom 3. Instead, I slide in Girl Source there. But in terms of series that I had this, it's really hard for me to pick what my least favorite was. I eventually settled on Kodomo no Jikan just because I read through that entire thing, and there is so much that I hate about it. That said, even though it is my least favorite series that we covered this year, there was still more positive I remember about it than there was in Harem End, because Harem End was just a big pile of shit that I just got through very quickly, and it was devoid of anything likable. Kodomo no Jikan, there were elements that, if put in a good series, would be good. And then Girl Source goes below that because it was bad, but it wasn't as offensively bad as either of those two.
So I would say for worst, it's definitely got to be Kodomo no Jikan. And then after that, it's probably 87 Clockers. But I'm real tempted to, because I have a mentality that says there's very few things, like I hate bad stuff that's like offensive, but then there's like the bad stuff that's just like shitty and kind of funny, and the stuff that's even worse than that to me is nothing, like just bland. So I kind of want to put Bloom Into You as one of my 3 because I remember nothing about it until you mentioned that it was the Yuri romance series. And I'm looking at like images of it now, and I'm still not remembering anything here. Like it's almost like I got hit with the Men in Black neuralize or something like that. Like while reading the series, like I stumbled upon like an ancient secret, and they were like, "Well, we have to just wipe out your mind." So I guess Bloom Into You goes with it or something. But it feels mean to say that, so I'll go with Girl Source, but understand that Bloom Into You seems like a very close thing. I really remember nothing about this series.
I feel like in the conversation, because I do want to give like a bit of an honorable mention to saying that yes, the Climber was also good. It came close to actually being among my favorites. And also, neither of us mentioned the Diamond and Pearl chapters of Pokemon, but I do remember that we both really liked them because we liked the bond between the 3 main characters. So
it's also harder to remember the ones at the start of the year than towards the end of the year. And obviously, like
so that said something for 87 clockers for you then that it was among your worst.
At the time I was like, man, this is like a really mean fucking manga towards these women. I don't understand it.
I just remember thinking it was really stupid.
All right. With that, let's move on to a superlative award here, Nick. Let's talk about Best Hero. Who was the best shonen protagonist in Shonen Jump? Or I guess, no, everything in here shonen. Who was the best Shonen Jump protagonist hero, Nick? To give some nominees here, there was Emma, Promised Neverland, Neo from Neolation, Yuega from We Never Learn, Ryunosuke from Last Sayuki, Taiyo, I'm just going to skip that one, Twilight, Kay Lloyd from Spy Family, Denji from Chainsaw Man, Anya from Spy Family, Hyusei from World Trigger, and Odin from One Piece.
I am going to say Yuiga because damn, boy. He finally had a thing that was actually focusing on him developing this year, and at the same time, there was a lot of character growth that happened in We Never Learn. That was the entire point, basically, of this stretch of the manga, of them coming towards the end of their arcs and their journeys and stuff, and each of them taking a big step forward. And of course, because of the nature of the series, Yuiga was instrumental in basically all of them, in addition to what happened to just him. So that is why I'm going with him.
Yeah. I think that's probably the right answer. I think Yuiga was probably the strongest protagonist of this year. In previous years, it's been Emma. A lot of the time has been like the big consideration, and I totally get that. I don't think in this year she's had as strong of a full-on presence. She had a big moment when she was talking to whatever the Great One or whatever it was. So there is a moment for her definitely in there. I probably am going to lean towards Yuiga, although there is a part of me that wonders, because I think like in the past few weeks, I feel like I've given Odin my character of the week like 2 or 3 times. So I'm curious if you tally them up, would I have given him more character of the weeks than Yuiga? But I will give it to Yuiga. I think he just had a really strong year in general.
I gotcha. According to, let's see here. Oh, that's the wrong page. Because I know that, Ninja X3i keeps track of that as well. So,
well, while you're looking for that, I will just note that the audience also picked Yuiga as the winner of the best hero.
According to this, most often, oh god, I don't know about individual characters. Shit. Here it is. Hang on. I just gotta scroll down. It was Odin, according to this. And,
so, is it?
Yeah. Odin was the most common MVP for you this year.
Okay.
So.
Well, maybe it should be Odin. I think I'm going to stick with Yuiga, but I really do like Odin. I think he's a really fun character. All right. Let's talk about the best new character, Nick. Enough of these old has-beens and their classic manga protagonist moments. Let's talk about the best new character.
Almost everyone in Chainsaw Man.
Well, maybe. So some of the options were Gavaldin from Neolation, Francois from Dr. Stone, Ryunosuke from Last Sayuki, Lumiere from Black Clover, Sekre from Black Clover, Estelle from Last Sayuki, Ash from Promised Neverland, Gielan from Promised Neverland. We can just take that one out. Anya from Spy Family, Reze from Chainsaw Man, On from Sam. Take that out. What Samurai 8? Get her out of here now. Odin from One Piece.
Chris is just like, veto that one, veto that one.
Somebody like, this is garbage. This one's poop too.
Fans, you have terrible taste. Fuck you.
And then Lloyd from Spy Family.
I am going to go with Sekre. There are a lot of great characters in that list that I've enjoyed, but to have a new character that I actually did really connect with that wasn't just like, Zora's so awesome, he tells everyone they suck, come out of Black Clover, has been really nice. And Sekre has been one of those characters that I'm like, I really like what you're about and what you do. So every time it seems that she has shown up, I have enjoyed her contribution to the series since she took on the Sekre form. There are definitely some characters in there that are like, oh, I really like that character that got introduced. I really love Francois, and I do like Aishi, but they have had much less to do outside of just the introductory stuff surrounding them. So in terms of a character of more influence, I'm going to go with Sekre.
Yep. Hold on a second. I got lost here. I was trying to navigate from one chapter to the other. All right. So I'll be honest. The person who I kind of want to give it to isn't actually in this list. But I guess it's because technically she was from last year. I kind of want to give it to Power from Chainsaw Man. And technically, I guess she was introduced right at the end of last year. But all of her biggest moments are this year, so I want to give it to her for that. But we'll
get to some of her moments without repeating, so that we don't repeat ourselves, because a lot of them were nominated too. So,
but in lieu of that, I will probably give it to. I think I'm gonna give it to Reze from Chainsaw Man. Although I do want to also kind of give it to Anya from Spy Family, but I think I'm gonna give it to Reze from Chainsaw Man, just because that feels like a character. The Chainsaw Man becomes really successful if it gets like an anime. I feel like that's a character that's going to become iconic in a way, in the same way that maybe even you look at a character like Mai Hughes from Fullmetal Alchemist. They're kind of iconic for being tragically killed, but I think that's definitely going to be a character who, when you think of that series, you're like, oh, remember Reze? You're going to talk about that, or it's going to be something to kind of think back to. And that's also what the audience picked as their favorite new character this year. So
Reze's whole arc has definitely felt like a big turning point for Chainsaw Man in demonstrating that, hey, this series is capable of, having really, an arc that has really cool action and introduces a really interesting, compelling villain. Because who are the villains in Chainsaw Man been prior to this? Weird monsters.
Yeah, the Katana guy,
and
I don't really remember outside of that. So I think it's a super good one. Let's talk about the best new power or technique. Now, there's a lot in here that's honestly probably too many to specifically call it individually. But Nick, you have it open as well, so I'm sure you're able to.
I've got to quickly scroll over to that tab.
I'll note that the audience favorite was Twice's Infinite Doubles, The Sad Man's Parade, which is a very good one. I think is definitely a worthy contender for the best new power that we saw this year. My personal favorite that's on here though was Sheikah's Hyper Meteor, where she just basically exploded the building. Not just because it was cool, but there was a lot of real build up over years to kind of get to that point, that it was really satisfying to see her just fucking annihilate something in such a huge way. And you're like, you know what? It's not it wasn't done. She didn't shout out Hyper Meteor when she did it or anything like that, just because that's not really how World Trigger works. But it was such a cool moment to see her finally fire off this big attack and be like, oh, it hit, and it was great.
I want to make a note that one of the nominations is Dingy Riding Beam.
Hey, it's a technique, I guess.
I can't see you're wrong. This is kind of a cop-out a little bit. But I'm going to go with the Nyoibo in The Last Sayuki.
Okay.
It's a bit of a cop out because it was just a general technique that like every everyone could use. But I really liked the way that it would be used at certain points, the way that, Ryunosuke would wield his like a bat, the way that it could, grow out a bunch of different branches. There was an enemy that had theirs that went through the whole body. And I just like the idea of like, oh yeah, it's like the extendo staff from, Journey to the West, but done in a lot of different ways.
So this is a tough one then. This is the best speech in 2019, and there are so many along this list. Again, this is one of those ones where there's too many for us to individually go by kind of what they do over and over again. But the audience, I'll say, specifically call their favorite as Luffy uniting the Udon prisoners.
It was a cool speech. Yeah.
Yeah, where he talks about like, this stuff, it has no effect on me, and the samurai I know are strong and hardy, but you guys are broken all the way on the inside. What do you mean normal life? He has this whole big speech uniting them together. It's a very cool moment.
I'm still going.
That's a good one. I like that one, Nick, too.
Pardon me.
I'm going to give mine to, and I kind of picked this one, maybe partially because it's been a little bit more recent, but I'm going to give mine to Escanor's poem, which was sort of like the thing that he did at the end there, where he's like, oh, heroes who have 7 wounds carved up into their hearts, neither fear nor despair exist for thee. What thou hast is courage, pride, and camaraderie. It was nice seeing that he actually... Like, I know they had only, like, really established it, like, just a couple chapters prior that he apparently had he was a poet at some points, but it was nice having it. It was a nice way to kind of end off that character, and in a year where there weren't too many, like, actual character deaths, this was a pretty big one.
I am actually also going to go with the audience's choice on Luffy's speech, because it's a good speech, and I remember how, like, oh man, this is... I remember the reaction to it being like, oh, this is, something that's like, yeah, Luffy could be like king of the pirates. And it really highlights his character being able to draw this out of people. So,
yes. All right. So let's talk about the biggest what the fuck moment in manga.
This was actually a really easy choice for me.
So the first option, the quote unquote epilogue, is interrupted when Elizabeth is seemingly crushed by a giant rock. Old Man Senseimon somehow being the one behind everything through his diamond generation. Food Wars ending with no conclusion of anything. The series, I just like that that's how they nominate Food Wars ending with no conclusion of anything. The series starts by blaming foreigners and globalization for things going wrong in Japan from Tokyo Shinobi Squad. Eden Zero being Zhao Mai basically as a battle fetish. The blatant celebrity inserts from Tokyo Shinobi Squad. We must not have read that part. We must have dropped it before I got to that.
I forgot. It happened. It happened.
Did it?
Yeah.
Wow, man.
The Justin Bieber incident was definitely something that was covered in the first 3 chapters.
That's right. It was. Yeah. Now you mentioned it. Kirisu's boobs cause Yuega to time travel. Asahi is the bastard son of Azami, and thus also Erina's half-brother from Food Wars. The Wizard King revives himself, effectively undoing the only major consequence of the reincarnation arc from Black Clover. This one's odd because it specifies numerous moments where Shiki is an unlikable asshole.
It's a little bit of a... Yeah.
Dharma somehow being the developer of the Samurai VR game that trained Hachimaru.
That's it for me. Like... He made a VR game to find a pupil worthy of being his successor. While blind!
When I looked over this list, I said to myself, what possibly beats Elizabeth being crushed by that fucking rock in that chapter? Because I've never reached a moment in my life where I've looked at the show like, what the fuck is happening so much? And the audience, they picked the Kirisu's boobs cause Yuega time travel. It's like another crazy one. But the moment I read it, I was like, that's 100% that Daruma made a video game. This is why I'm picking his disciple. Like, he programmed it. He made a full MMO. He's, I guess, intentionally filling it with new content. Like,
I really should be searching for that new disciple, but I've got to release the next patch.
I gotta get a Star Wars cameo in there.
Thank God that Ian McDermott recorded this Palpatine voice line for me.
Holy shit. Oh, man. Yeah, that's my book.
There's a bit more. Himeno vomiting into Denji's mouth when he expects a kiss. Random rapey Spade Kingdom soldiers. Merlin somehow being the one behind everything in the latest chapter. And then Hachimaru from Samurai 8 saying, "Nice praying, and..."
That's a good one.
Which is funny, but not nearly as what the fuck he is. Daruma designing a fucking video game to get a samurai disciple.
It's... Fuck, man. It really is a mind-boggling thing when you say it out loud. All right. Let's move on then to one of my favorites of the year, the best 2-page spread. And because a lot of people, I'm sure, are listening to this solely via the audio thing, we're not going to basically like detail what every one of these are, but you can always find these if you check out the spreadsheet that Ninja X3i maintains. You can find it over on our Discord. Then there's a ton of these on here from a lot of different series. Some color pages are in there. A lot of Dr. Stone. A lot of different things. Nick, you've been able to look over this list. Is there one that calls out to you as your favorite of the year?
Dr. Stone's 2-page color spread with everyone punching. It's such a cool color spread. I love it. Yeah.
It is very good. The audience picked Denji defeating the Katana level devil using his chainsaw legs, which is a pretty cool one as well. I do like that one. I think honestly I'm gonna give mine to Double unleashing all of his clones from My Hero Academia 229. Because it is twice, yeah, rather, using like all the clones coming out of there, his arms broken. I do want to give like a special attention to that chapter as being a supremely great moment. And honestly, if that moment hadn't been in there, I don't think the My Villain Academia arc would be considered nearly as much of a success as it was. So I really want to call special attention to that guy.
All right.
Best twist, Nick.
Yes.
There's a lot on here. A lot.
There are a lot. And
Minerva,
some of them I don't think are twists, but
Minerva was Norman. Charmy is a half dwarf. My Villain Academia. Sanji's raid suit gives him invisibility. Everyone on the Perseus getting stoned. The demon for the manga's first page was Leash, who transformed himself in order to counter the demon's plan. All right. The false epilogue.
From the Seven Deadly Sins. Yeah.
Big Mom and Kaido decide to team up. Norman never intended to change his plan to annihilate demons. The master of the Petrification Kingdom is actually petrified and gruesomely broken. I don't know why the Soul and Charlotte one's on there. I guess that's a twist. Sanji was a member of the royal family. Ibara took Kaku's earpiece to eavesdrop in the Kingdom of Science's communication. And then Merlin manipulating the Seven Deadly Sins for her goals of releasing chaos.
Yeah. Pretty easy choice, honestly, for me. I'm going with the Rock's Fall, false epilogue, because it was a legitimate shock. Because when it happened, I believe that I said, like, well, I mean, I don't think that Elizabeth's actually dead. But even so, it was a huge shock to just be like, oh, I guess the series is not over then.
To have an entire chapter devoted to characters like saying goodbye.
And it was multiple chapters.
Yeah. And then having this big 1-page spread of fucking Melodious waving as Elizabeth's walking in the background and just cuts the same fucking panel and a rock's just fallen and crushed Elizabeth. You're like, holy shit. Yeah, that's it. 100%. It's what the audience picked as well. It's the best twist of the year. Then we have best fight. And this one's honestly kind of tough because I don't really think there are that many great options for fights this year. There weren't a ton of fights in manga that really kind of carried across. World Triggers had a couple. There were a bunch of My Hero Academia during the League of Villains fight. Last Sayuki had some. Naruto and Delta, Naruto and Sasuke versus Jigan. I mean, fucking Eden Zeros had 1,000, but they all suck. I don't know. Nick, where do you fall on this?
Reze is going after Denji.
Okay.
We had a great time every single chapter that was going on. I love how it just kind of keeps on moving, and it's this continuous Terminator style sequence up until it switches gears with, Denji and Beam going up against Typhoon and Reze in this huge brawl. And suddenly it becomes more comical and action packed, and then it resolves not with them beating the fuck out of each other, but with them falling over into the ocean. So.
Yeah. That is what the audience picked as well. I'm going to give mine. It's not technically on here. It's just included in one of them. But the League of Villains versus the Metal Liberation Army. I specifically want to give it to the Twice fight against. I can't remember what his name was, the clone guy or whatever. But it was such a great encounter, and it was really cool seeing how it all played out at the end. So I want to give special attention to that one. That's a really good one, Nick. Most improved character. Went through this real quick. Yuega from We Never Learned, Kirisu from We Never Learned, Ryusei, Twice, Sakurai from Black Clover, Ginro from Dr. Stone, Ogata from We Never Learned, Chika from World Trigger, Yusei from World Trigger, Merlin from Seven Deadly Sins, and Aruka from We Never Learned. I don't think Aruka should be on. I think we kind of established she had been much better after her first introduction. I think last year was her improvement year.
I'm gonna stick with the We Never Learned thing. I know that that they kind of stack the deck because if we're talking about this, aspect of it, because the series is all about moving forward and trying to get better. But I'm gonna give it to Kurisu.
Okay.
I think that she became a much more admirable character once you got into her head and saw where she was coming from, and saw her actually trying to get closer to these students that she had been so deliberately cold towards before. Also, gave her more admirable qualities. Instead of just being like, oh, she's really good at teaching and lessons, but she's bad at cleaning up after herself. So,
in a perfect world, World Trigger would still be weekly, and this award would go to Chika because she's had just a crazy year. But unfortunately, because it's monthly, and we even lost a couple months during that because of it, we haven't really had her arc complete yet.
She's not done improving.
So I want to pay attention to it, but honestly, I'm gonna give I like Merlin and I liked Ginro a lot, but I'm gonna give mine to Sakurai from Black Clover because she has kind of emerged as the only other character outside of Zora who I'm like, I can stand you. You're like a member of the Black Bulls who isn't the exact same fucking personality as everyone else. So I really enjoy that there's someone like that in Black Clover. And then best villain, Nick, of all of the villains of 2019, who was your favorite?
In terms of actually being a villain, I'm going to give it to Ibarra. It surprised me to have Dr. Stone have such an effective antagonist, given the premise of the series and how Tsukasa was a much more relatable kind of character. You saw where he was coming from, and then Hyoko was just kind of a dick.
Yeah.
But Ibarra feels like a really disgustingly hateable person, and he's very memorable in his actions and the way he's drawn. So that's going to be it for me. There were definitely some that were more entertaining. Like I think the Queen was a much more fun character to follow whenever he showed up. I thought that Givaudan was really interesting, but we didn't get to see him do much. But it's got to be Urara for me.
I want to specify because I forgot to mention it. Twice won the most improved character for the audience.
Oh.
And then my villain, I want to agree with you. I want to give it to Ibarra, but I think I'm going to give it to Reze from Chainsaw Man. She had a lot less amount of time, but just so effective in everything she did. And at the end, I guess you can even kind of argue, is she even a villain in the same way? If I was to say the best full-on heel, it's Ibarra without a doubt. He's just so unlikable. But I really liked what they did with Reze, and it was a nice change of character pace for that series as well, to kind of have someone who you sort of sympathized with and gave a lot more complexity to those characters. The audience picked, of course, Shigaraki because they are losers who have no taste for death. I just wanted to be mean. They picked Shigaraki, who did have a really big year too, and has been very good. And then finally, this is the big one, Nick. What was the best series of 2019? I'll note the audience picked Spy Family, which is perfectly understandable.
That's definitely understandable. It's a bit difficult because there were a lot of series that it kind of felt like things weren't quite as good for them as they had been in previous years. I think that of the series that did really well this year, I think that We Never Learn had a really good year.
Mm-hmm.
Dr. Stone was good, as it kind of has been consistently. I am going to ever agree with the choice of Spy Family, because it has been great from inception up to now without like a single chapter that hasn't been incredibly entertaining. So
Somebody marked Agravity Boys off, which I feel like is a mistake. That was going to be my pick, but since it's not an option, I guess I'll go with a different one. Looking down them, there's quite a few that I think had really strong years. Dr. Stone, as you mentioned, My Heroes had a pretty decent year, I think. One Piece, I think, has had a rough start, but like the last half, maybe if you want to say last third of the year, has been really, really strong. Spy Family, Seven Deadly Sins had a crazy year. We Never Learn and World Trigger both like really strong. I'm gonna give mine though, I think, to Chainsaw Man. Part of it's a little bit spoiled, I guess, because I read so much of it in a concentrated burst. But I think Chainsaw Man has just been, in my mind, the most interesting series this year. And just if it didn't have the Reze chapters towards the end, I probably wouldn't have given it to it. But those Reze chapters have shown that the author has an ability to tell well-crafted emotional stories. It's not all just, I've made a perpetual blood machine and crazy nonsense like that. Like, oh no, you're actually able to just tug my heartstrings and tell me this kind of crazy story. So I think I'll give it to Chainsaw Man. I think it was a really, really strong series this year. And I think in general, this was a pretty good year for a lot of series. So I really enjoy that.
yeah.
Yep.
Well, we are out of time, Chris.
Yes, we have to get going, guys.
So we will see you guys for the rest of this year. Join us next week and each week beyond that as we head into the new decade. And if you want to look back at some of the stuff that we've talked about, however, you can always go on weeklymangarecap.podbean.com, check all that stuff out. Once again, we want to extend a thanks to Ninja X3i for making this section of the podcast infinitely easier to keep organized. And as well to everyone who helps make the podcast what it is. People support us on Patreon, as well as our talk artist, Steve Mann, freaking Infamous Planet. Sorry, I was trying to remember his name and I just kind of said it dismissively.
Infamous Planet.
Winston Cheddar and Gage Sundberg. Not Gage Sundberg, sorry.
Milo Jackson.
Milo Jackson. Gage is a different person, sorry. I was looking at a contact list and got confused. Anyway, you guys all help us out with so many cool things and help us make the show better than it should be, honestly. Absolutely. So thank you guys. And thank you for following us, and thank you for listening to us for another decade.
Yes, It has been very fun. Weekly Manga Recap has existed almost a decade now. So yeah, it's been crazy.
Getting close.
I'm sure at some point we'll be able to wax philosophic on that more. This episode, unfortunately, has to be cut short. But thank you, everybody. Everybody has a great new year, too, you know? Take care of yourself, guys.
Yes. Do that.
Indeed. All right. Goodbye.